the confrontational element of black metal and kind of how it at least how it started, rather than how it sort of exploded, it was a reaction to anodizing the scene in the way that was what was happening. You had kind of that I guess that initial sort of spark of rebellion and that outlet for people through thrash and through the beginnings of death metal. And then it starts getting corporatized, and you've got grunge coming in, and you've got all this really kind of soppy nonsense. And it was almost was it almost like you guys felt like, hey, we need to take this back to the old school, but when we take it back to the old, I guess the first principles, we're really going to take it back to the first principles and show people what rebellion is supposed to be about.
That's very right. It is, and on the forefront of that was Euronymous. People can say whatever the fuck they want about it, but he was the one who kind of pointed at what we were going to go back and look at,
Yeah.
Because we didn't go back and look at, Iron Maiden. We went back and looked at Bathory and Celtic Frost and Venom instead, So he was one of those who kind of lit up a path there, because there's a lot of people who never heard the old Destruction and Sodom stuff ever, and then got into it through black metal, But so he was he was very good at kind of like, pay attention to this one, Sarcophago, go back and listen to this, because most of those albums was ignored during the trash, years and stuff like that. And I don't know, it just kind of took us. It was a wish to kind of make it raw again, because you had, as I said, the grunge thing. You have the Use Your Illusion stuff from Guns N' Roses. Then you turn to Metallica and you go, what the fuck is going on here? And then, it all just, it's just like a childish little thing going, fuck you!
Greetings, friends. Welcome to episode 157 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, I am catching up with the legendary Svartalv Halvorsen, aka SA Destroyer of Nocturnal Breed. He has also played in Gehenna, Satyricon, Eternus. He has contributed lyrics to 1349, has first-hand knowledge and experience of the glory years of the Norwegian black metal scene, and so unsurprisingly, a big chunk of our conversation centered around that. But as it happens, we also ended up setting a new record for the longest ever interview that I have recorded for this podcast, just over 3 hours, and trust me when I say it is relentless. So very, very excited to be sharing this with all of you. This is a conversation where I went in not knowing what to expect, and I came out feeling like I had spent 3 hours chopping it up with an old bro. If you are new to the podcast, of course, make sure that you elbow drop the subscribe button on your platform of choice, be that YouTube, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts on. If the spirit moves you to do so, leave me a 5-star review, because that really helps the show, and thank you very much to everybody who has already done so. And then also check out the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store, because nothing says Merry Christmas Grandma quite like an Into the Necrosphere tank top under her Christmas tree. Make sure as well that you are following my fellow horseman of the podcast Apocalypse, my own inner circle, so to speak. On a Monday, Brandon Legion brings you Horrorwolf 666. On a Wednesday, Mike Hill drops the knowledge with Everything Went Black. He returns on a Thursday alongside his co-hosts, the mighty Mike Scandado and Jeff Kashid, to discuss new and classic horror movies on Necromaniacs. And then on a Sunday, the Reverend Carl Hykara brings you his own esoteric and occult message on the Lord's Day with his podcast Solnox. So make sure that you show all of those gentlemen your love and support as we wage the war on shit content. Next week, I am back with my guests, Matt Brizzo and Kelly T of the Slaves to the Underground podcast. Matt has also resurrected his band Spells of Torment, so plenty for us to discuss. Unfortunately, this week, because of the length that this conversation ended up running, there is no news, there is no review segment, but that will return next week as well. So for those of you guys in particular that love the news segment, there will be a news rant par excellence on next week's episode. And as of next week, I actually only have 2 episodes left before the end of the year, and then I'm off on holiday. You'll get about probably a 5 to 6 week break, and then I'll be back to begin my countdown of my favorite releases of 2022. And I've got a bunch of other stuff in the pipeline as well. So lots of exciting things to come. But in the meantime, forget about all of that. Set your worries aside. Pour yourself a cup of coffee or a stiff drink, depending on the time of day. And join me in welcoming to the podcast for the first time, Svartalv Halvorsen. So welcome to Into the Necrosphere, my man. And I know I said I was going to hit the beers this evening, but I have switched to red wine. That's my vibe tonight.
I'm no better. I'm having watermelon cider.
Ah, I was about to say.
I got a fetish for pink drinks and foods.
I do like me some watermelon flavored anything. So
some people makes some people puke, but I think watermelon is brilliant in everything.
I've never tasted watermelon cider though. That sounds really, really good.
It's really nice. It's just like a nice soft drink.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm noticing, and obviously those that are listening to this won't see this, but as I'm on, for those watching it on YouTube, I immediately am drawn to the speakers that you have in the background there, and I see some vinyls and stuff in the background as well. What sort of setup are you packing in your? This is kind of like a study and listening room, from what I can tell.
It's a combined. I live in a tiny little house in the woods.
Yeah.
It's only like 50 square meters inside. So I combined, my sleeping room, my bedroom, that's off, but this is the living room, and I'm going to change it around. I've been doing like the Nocturnal Breed album for 1.5 years. So I've been having half the room full of equipment. Mm-hmm. So if I turn the camera around, and it's just a normal sofa and stuff like that. But yeah, and it's only me,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a girlfriend for the last 13 years and stuff, but we haven't lived together for 4 years because it's much easier.
Yeah.
And we actually came to that very smart conclusion, instead of just ripping each other apart, we just live on separate places. So she lives like 700 meters down the road here.
Okay, all right. So you got your buffer zone when you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I'm just packing old shit. This is old Kenwood stuff. From the late 80s, amplifier, the speakers, everything. And I have some tiny little, I don't remember what the name is anymore. Tiny speakers that I've had since 1991 that I do all the mixes and all kind of things on, because I know that sounds so well.
Yeah.
So, but when I'm going to blast, I use these big babies on the side here.
Yeah. And so the living in the countryside, that you've been doing that for a little while already, because I think I've seen you mention it on interviews like as far back as like 2014. How long have you been living in the countryside for? When living rural? Because I have done the same thing. I did that. So we moved here in 2020, and it was kind of to get away from all the craziness and the frustration of the pandemic. And I'm extremely glad that I did so. I'm always curious to speak to a fellow country dweller, because it's a different way of life, without a shadow of a doubt.
I grew up in Oslo, at Kolbotna, just outside Oslo, and in 2000 and what was it? Around this time, 2011, we just said fuck it, and we moved into Finnskogen, which is one of the most remote places in Norway. And I've been here ever since. And I had a couple of other places I lived, but that was once we lived for 4 or 5 years on an Arctic island, way above the
island.
Yeah, way above the Arctic border, So
yeah.
And I had 1 year alone in a giant hotel on a mountain plateau. That was very cool, because that was like full-on Shining stuff. I was
just about to say, I immediately started thinking of The Shining when you mentioned that.
Yeah, it was me and 300-400 rooms or whatever. It was just this giant wooden old hotel, and there was a Polish woman who came up and kind of sorted out some kind of computer stuff once a week. Apart from that, it was only me. Snowed in, hotel was closed, I just went up and said, "Can I rent a room?" And they said, "Yeah, rent a room." So the better part of 12 years I've spent away from towns, and it's come to the point when I'm 20 minutes away from Oslo, I start to get this creeping fucking feeling.
Yeah, so I was about to say, like, what was initially the reason for you deciding to move away? You know, why did you want to get away from the city?
It's the people, the hassle, the stress, the Oslo I grew up in is not the Oslo that is there now. It's so hipsterish, and I don't know, I'm not into kind of cappuccino bars and fancy, $30 burgers and shit like that. So it just didn't sit well in the mouth anymore. So we just decided to try it out. And I've always been dragged to the mountains and to the woods and stuff like that. And when we came in here, it was obvious that people here don't give a shit. It's like a Twin Peaks kind of place. And that's perfect. You can do whatever you want. I can stand in my garden with my hunting bow and go ape shit and listen to music as loud as I want.
and it obviously carried the additional benefit that during the pandemic, you I would assume didn't really experience much of the craziness and the hassle of the lockdown and all of that sort of crap.
No, not at all. I don't know, it's probably stupid, but I've turned into a kind of people shy person. So I even go to get my groceries like 10 in the evening and stuff like that. So during the pandemic, I didn't see anyone apart from my family. And that was brilliant because I got to make a lot of music and just kind of dive into little themes and things. And, who gave a shit if I spent 3 days, reading up on some kind of weird thing for myself and, cutting out little pictures and, I don't know. I act like a madman when I'm alone.
Yeah. I'm curious about this hotel though. So, I mean, what made you go out and rent a room in a hotel in some, distant and remote spot, especially, given the environment, nobody there aside from somebody who comes to check on the computers once in a while?
It was just tempting. And we had it was one of the worst kind of places we have been in the relationship we had. So we had a little breakup and she went to New York. And I just had this, I don't know, I needed to change my life. So I actually took everything out of a 2-story big house out on the porch and I burned 80% of it. And I packed the rest in my car and I just drove off into the mountains. No thought, nothing, just like, get me the fuck away from this place.
Yeah.
And I've been up there many times, so I just kept on driving till I knew there was a hotel at the end, because after that there's a nature reserve kind of thing, so you're not allowed to build anything. So it's the last hotel. It's in a place called Ustos, and this is one of the few places in the world where you get 6 meters of snow. It's like
Jesus Christ.
It's like driving through tunnels. The sticks on the side of the road is like 6.5 meters tall. It's like little trees.
Yeah.
So no, it was just, I don't know, fate kind of thing. I just stopped there, and it happened that woman was there that day fixing her computer stuff and checking up on the hotel. And yeah, I thought, well, fuck it. If I don't like it, I can just get in my car and I'll be in Oslo in 5 hours. But so I just packed a lot of hash and my computer and a bunch of comics and books and stuff. And some of the days I just drove out, you can drive almost up to some of the glaciers. And I just parked my car in the middle of nowhere and let it snow in. And I was sitting in the back of my car, having everything rigged, and I had a bed there and everything, and just, writing music and having a smoke and going for a walk. And
by night you'd sit in the bar talking to Lloyd, the bartender.
Yes, it was. I actually did this whole thing, because this is a very old hotel, so it's like a clustered thing. So there's a main hotel in the middle, and there's smaller like apartment blocks. And I lived in one of those far away, and they're all connected by tunnels. And that's one of those, walking down there again, with a half a feet long joint, 4 o'clock in the morning, all alone, and you have this corridor that just disappears into nowhere in front of you. And of course I'm like packed full of all this horror shit, and The Shining and all of it. And of course you can feel it, but I think that's, a little research into what we're doing here. I'm doing this dark shit kind of stuff, music, and I got into occultism and all that stuff very early. So I'm not really afraid of the dark. I'm not afraid to be alone, kind of, and I like to push myself. And of course, there was times there when you're just like you're shit scared, and something kind of gets over you. But when you push through that kind of thing, you grow a little. It's like working hard. Your hands get stronger. It's that kind of feeling just in the soul. So I just spent like the whole winter there, just pushing myself and swimming in feelings and atmospheres. And
yeah, and it's a very liberating experience once, as you say, once you kind of push through that threshold.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because
it's like a
it
mental walkabout kind of
exactly,
thing.
yeah.
Next level kind of thing. And it probably sounds weird, but most people have never spent 2 months alone in a complete dark place, with snow everywhere. It would drive
No.
most people crazy, but you have to take it for what it is. It's an experience, and I'm not going to die here. So I'm not going to spend the rest of my life living like this, but it was nice. The only one who came to see me was my daughter. Who came 2 times up there and spent the weekend, and we made tacos and watched funny movies, and and then she went off, and I was back into wacko world.
Back to spacing out.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. The obviously over anyone who's not been to Oslo yet, who's into black metal, probably runs around thinking that there's a guy with corpse paint standing on every single corner. How has the city changed since the days where you grew up in it? Is it a lot of gentrification? What's kind of the main things that has changed about the city?
When I grew up in Oslo in the early 80s, it was very similar to what London was like in the late 70s and early 80s. It was kind of dirty and hard, drunks all over. Punk rockers, goth people. It was much more kind of like the whole 80s was much more like that. People looked much more like what they were. So there were kind of groups or things, but you could kind of move around town, just observing all these things. And gradually, of course, it all gets much more Americanized. And during the 90s, the normal stuff, gangs and that kind of thing. And then they try to kind of clean up Oslo. So now it's got like a beautiful, skyscraper, seafront kind of thing going on, and a lot of hipster cafes and, artist kind of places. But I don't feel at home there at all. It's probably me that is old and grumpy, but I don't get any of that, grit from from the street, if you know what I mean. When I grew up, it seemed like everyone kind of, had to kind of work through some fucking shit and, to get there. And that thing kind of disappeared. And some of the magic was this kind of, gray worker town kind of thing, like probably like Birmingham in England, where that's, Oslo is beautiful. But back then it was, no one thought about, the layout of the town or anything. So there was like full on traffic with 4 lanes of cars going past the castle and shit like that. Just like, why don't you try to make this look a little bit prettier? But it was a part of the thing. So, and during the black metal stuff, like from let's say 1990 till 1994, then you could see black metal people all over the place, like little black creatures walking around, but no one knew what it was. So the people around us was like, is this a left-wing punk kind of people, or is it a heavy rocker? Or people didn't know, so people just let us be. And then of course now it's, if you at the wrong part of the year, if you go there during Easter, it's swarming with blackpackers and people, and they're filling up the basement with a graffiti on the wall. And it's like, it's really weird. And you have these tour buses going around Oslo, and you can see the burning churches, places, and that's pretty weird. That was very far from what we were thinking about when we were doing this.
I was gonna ask you, what was like the youth culture like at that time? Because if you think about cultural flashpoints, black metal, without a shadow of a doubt, in Norway was a cultural flashpoint in the 1990s. In the same way that punk was a cultural flashpoint, and goth was a cultural flashpoint, and you can understand the things that led up to that in terms of youth culture and things like that. So, what was kind of the culture like amongst, I guess, generally the youth? And what do you think kind of spawned or led to black metal as a movement in Norway starting?
I think like in base facts, it's kind of started like all those other genres you mentioned, like goth and punk and stuff. But in Norway, it's a little bit strange because the whole black metal thing came from kids, and I'm saying kids because none of us were like really old.
Yeah.
But we all come from pretty good families, you know. This is not like oh, you know, we were 6 people having to share one bread during my upbringing. It's not that kind of thing. It's a lot of pretty well-off kids, but it's the way Norway felt in a way, because it in my eyes it still feels like this. It's like there's, and I've said this in other interviews too, it's like when people are losing their mad people or people with Alzheimer's, they have this kind of blank stare, and that's what I see around me, and I saw around me when I was growing up, this, call it socialist kind of blank stare, when we just pretend it's really nice and everything is moving the right way and it's kumbaya, and it never felt fucking kumbaya.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I always had food on the table and things were good like that, but it didn't feel, it felt like everyone was shutting their eyes to everything, and then everyone started to kind of trying to be like the States and to simulate the States, and during the early 90s there, when you had grunge, just falling over and fucking up everything, and heavy metal, you could see where it was going, you could smell it on everything where it was going, and it's just that for those people who grew up with that, dirty trash death metal demos, early death metal years, it was just a natural progression. But in Norway, it just came out like a massive fuck you, the size that I don't think we ever expected that either. It just one triggered the other, and you were kind of looking over and was like, fuck, he did this. Well, fuck, I'm going to burn down something way fucking bigger. Yeah. There was never any big fucking meaning behind it. It was never a grand satanic ritual kind of thing,
In a circle,
no,
all that shit. Yeah.
Of course, there's an inner circle, but that's inner circle. It's in every group. You can have that in,
No.
baker buddies, there's an inner group, with that.
So, we only share the recipe with each other.
Exactly. I'm sure there's a lot of knifing going on, like in the cupcake business and stuff too. It's just like that. So it was, bands cluster around each other. And, for me, the guys in the Mayhem and stuff was 5-6 years older than me. And the Darkthrone guys were like 2-3 years older than me. But I grew up where they come from. So I was lucky that I worked at a gas station with Zephyrus, the original old guitarist from Darkthrone. And I was so lucky that, I had these people around me that, kept giving me shit. This is like, I remember I got this live tape of Morbid Angel. I think it was from 1987 with original setup, with a drummer on the vocals and stuff, with a live gig from Italy. And I was like completely amazed that it was possible to make this fucking disgusting chainsaw sound.
Yeah.
Because that came at the same time I was listening to Ozzy Osbourne, in Iron Maiden and stuff. And I constantly was fed this, cruel black and white demo covers and stuff. And I'm so glad I kind of got that. And it just ignited all of us for no apparent reason other than, this is going to hell and we're going to be a bit on the front line here.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, so you mentioned Morbid Angel with the drummer on vocals. That was Mike Browning, who later formed Nocturnus when he was vocalist. Yeah. But so if I'm kind of reading you correctly, I guess from your perception, the confrontational element of black metal and kind of how it at least how it started, rather than how it sort of exploded, it was a reaction to anodizing the scene in the way that was what was happening. You had kind of that I guess that initial sort of spark of rebellion and that outlet for people through thrash and through the beginnings of death metal, and then it starts getting corporatized, and you've got grunge coming in, and you've got all this really kind of soppy nonsense, and it was almost sort of, was it almost like you guys felt like, hey, we need to take this back to the old school, but when we take it back to the old, I guess the first principles, we're really going to take it back to the first principles and show people what rebellion is supposed to be about.
That's very right. It is, and on the forefront of that was Euronymous. People can say whatever the fuck they want about it, but he was the one who kind of pointed at what we were going to go back and look at.
Yeah.
Because we didn't go back and look at Iron Maiden. We went back and looked at Bathory and Celtic Frost and Venom instead. So he was one of those who kind of lit up a path there, because there's a lot of people who never heard the old Destruction and Sodom stuff ever, and then got into it through black metal. But so he was he was very good at kind of like, pay attention to this one, Sarcophago, go back and listen to this, because most of those albums was ignored during the trash, years and stuff like that. And I don't know, it just kind of took us, it was a wish to kind of make it raw again, because you had, as I said, the grunge thing, you have the Use Your Illusion stuff from Guns N' Roses, then you turn to Metallica and you go, what the fuck is going on here? And then, it all just, it's just like a childish little thing going, fuck you.
Yeah.
And then you start spitting, and this was us kind of spitting. And it was never like, in Poland, for example, you have a very irritating Catholic church that reaches into your life like, like a wet hand in the night. But here in Norway, we have this pathetic Lutheran church it's like, there's 9% or something going to church all in Norway. And it was never about that. We were never suppressed by the church, it didn't, it was not about that. But that was because people are very like, they take that blasphemy thing a bit serious here. So it kind of felt very good to be twisting the knife in that wound, because there's not that many other wounds we could twist it in. There has been bands who tried thrash metal and death metal and hardcore and punk music here in Norway, but they never kind of like got through to the whole country with their fuck offs. We did.
yeah. And that's the thing. It's like the anti-religious thing. It's I think, again, a lot of people misinterpret it as being, people looked at it and they thought that there were, gangs of, animal sacrificing lunatics in robes running around in the forest. It's really more.
There was a little bit of that too.
It's really, but it's really at the core of it. It's more of an expression of rebellion.
Yeah.
Than anything else.
Just not wanting to be part of the whole thing anymore, be it Norway or the Western kind of world. And for me, it was also mixed in with a lot of, my interest for history and studying that, and being sent to Sunday school, when I was a kid, even back then, when I was 6 years old, there was just something fucking wrong when they started to, they tried to teach me religion. And in my head, I started to compare history and religion. And it's like, something's fucking off here. And you go through your whole life, and it's like everyone that's supposed to kind of take me on my right path is full of bullshit. Either they know it or not. And that just grew big time. And I must say, personally too, it was like the people I grew up with who was totally into, the techno that was coming then. We call it dance music, but they called it techno, like Snap and, that kind
I remember
of shit,
Snap.
Yeah. And
the main like song, or the big record that they released was super popular in South Africa, where I grew up as well. World Power. I remember that really well.
Massive. I remember all the girls from my class. I can close my eye and I can see them drunk on parties, just like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
And that never, all that shit kind of pushed me further and further away. And as I said on other interviews too, I grew up with a lot of junkies and a mom that she needed to work 24/7. So I was basically alone, and I grew up with all these people 25, 30 years older than me.
Yeah.
And that just made me grow up really fucking fast. And then it was natural when that whole serious kind of dark music thing came in. It was just a natural progression into the whole thing. And growing up, having Mayhem living 10 minutes away from me constantly, we heard, 3 days after Dead arrived to Norway, we heard about it, at the gas station, from Zephyrus in Darkthrone, who then, had short hair and, a white T-shirt, and 3 weeks after he suddenly popped up with a brand new, leather jacket, and his hair combed down. It's like, okay, something's happening here,
Yeah. I was going to ask you. You mentioned Euronymous earlier. I assume that you knew him.
I was pretty young. I was like 16, 17. And he was nice, really nice guy. Always talked to him in the shop and stuff like that. Buying records from him, hanging out for hours, talk. We had this common kind of thing from the thrash music, because I grew up on that thrash music, and also hardcore stuff like Killing Joke and Discharge, and so we had a musical connection thing there that was fun to talk about. And I was never one of those who went down there in the full black metal uniform, kind of standing on guard and prepared. I didn't kind of do that. And I don't know, I think he probably enjoyed just the musical input. I'm a little different than most of the other people that was hanging around. I don't do that worship kind of thing.
Was there, when he was alive, was there that degree of kind of Euro worship around him? And again, I think you can, I know an awful lot of people where that was the case or that has been the case for them as well. But yeah, I was about to say, was there that kind of Euro worship, and people are hanging around the shop just to, be his mate, or just get a whiff of his fucking, deodorant or something like that?
Yeah, it was. I went to school with, Garm from Ulver. And had a lot of those people from that band, and that I observed, and a couple of other bands too. Some people just spent the whole day waiting to get off school to go down there and just like stand in that fucking shop for 2-3 hours and hope that, he would say something nice to you, or, you look cool, or your logo on the leather jacket is awesome, or, some stuff like that. There was a lot of that going on in the little circle that it was. Less than 50 people went to that shop.
Yeah,
and so probably 100 other people that just went there once and said, "This is not my kind of thing."
This is not my vibe. So one of the things that whenever you see any documentaries, or you obviously they really talked it up on Laws of Chaos, which is, frankly, a movie I wish I hadn't seen, but that's a different topic of conversation.
I haven't seen it actually.
It's fucking awful, but it's anyway. But the point is, one of the things that they really kind of talk up in terms of its significance, and part of the reason why they mentioned it is because of how Euronymous responded to it, was the first Burzum releases. Did that have as much of an impact as some documentaries and some books and things like that would suggest that it had, in terms of people listened to that and went like, "Oh my God, this is fucking like the next level"?
Yeah, in the inner Oslo, kind of all the guys who were turning into Ulver, Arcturus, Mysticum, Emperor, all these guys around there. Yeah, the it was kind of the sound, that Burzum sound it's I don't know, it's hard to kind of grasp what it is.
Yeah.
And the way he kind of launches his vocals, is the first one who just really just ripped out, everything on his vocals. So yeah, there was instantly a little murmur going on, like, hey, I remember I got the demo, I think from Garm. It was like, check this. You have to check this out. And a lot of talk about this guy from Bergen going to come down to Helvete, the shop, and he has this mass, and always this funny fucking thing about it is that everyone's always talking about how people looked. So it was like, yeah, he has these riding boots, they go up to here, and then he has spikes on tops, and there's all these things that people tell you that gonna make you like, oh, in awe of this person, and then you go down to Helvete, and there's this little guy from Bergen who's there, and like, it's the contrast is kind of weird. Same thing with like Euronymous. Like, I'm almost 2 heads taller than him.
Holy shit! Yeah, he always, like, on any photo you look at him, he looks small.
he's a tiny little fuck, you know, and even Hellhammer looks big next to him, but even Hellhammer is like almost a head shorter than me. So when I met Euronymous, it's not like, oh, you don't go like that. You go, well,
hello. Reach
hello.
down and shake his hand.
Yeah, same thing with It from Abruptum, you know, he was, I don't know, 152 or something like that.
So you got involved in it through Gehenna. That was your first band that you were in, right?
I got involved in it through playing in tons of thrash bands at Kolbotn while kind of like talking to the Dark Throne guys and having these people around. And when I was, I think, first year into high school, I just realized that either I'm gonna be a junkie fucking crook or I need to get the fuck away. And I got the fuck away, so I moved to the West Coast, and I was pretty lucky because the guy who had joined Gehenna to do the bass, he died after a couple of weeks in a car crash, and I just went straight into that spot and took it from there. And that's when it really started to, you know, the wheels started to roll, because all the thrash bands and all the stuff I've been doing in Oslo since I started in a band in 86 and played my first concert in 87. And none of the guys I played with in Oslo, and they're great guys, but no one had that, you know, that thing you need to have that make you do it 10 hours every day and you think about it 24/7, and that's the only fucking focus. They didn't have that. So I probably played in 10 different bands and we never even got a fucking demo out, you know. And when I then met the Gehenna guys who were just like possessed and like just made their demo stuff, and it's just it's a black flame explosion kind of thing going on there. And I remember how it just felt like liberating to meet these soulmates kind of thing, you know, and we spent every day just in the forest, going down to rehearse, back into the forest, drinking beer, you know. That's the only thing we did. Fuck school, you know, you just went to school so your parents wouldn't hassle you too much, so you can like keep on doing this black thing, you know.
So how old were you when you joined Gehenna?
16.
16, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
that's something
we were all 16 and 17 and when it started Gehenna.
So I mean, I know you listen to the 666 countdown, but you know, one of the things that you know, if I wasn't articulate about it enough, I think that blows me away the most about Norway and about the scene there is how young everybody was. Like for me, like guys that are that young should not be creating music as sophisticated as in the Nightside Eclipse. Or actually, as I've discovered, you know, not discovered, rediscovered, going back and listening to the Gehenna back catalog in the run up to you and I talking, you know, I listened back to Second Spell as an example, and you listen to a track like A Witch Is Born, and it is fucking brilliant. I mean, it still has like the same edge to it that you know all of the greats of that era has. But like I said, what blows my mind is how young people were when they were creating this. It's like, as I said, you have no right to create music this sophisticated when you're this young.
Actually, that's a very good point, because I think that might have come back and kicked us in the ass a bit some years later.
In what sense?
If you kind of rewind that a little bit forward until the, like, especially the end of the 90s, there's a lot of desperation going on in the different band camps on, you know, we need to renew ourselves and come up with this thing, because everyone came up with their own, not just, everyone was kind of, it's really weird. We were all part of a thing that, you know, everyone had their own feeling, you know. Ulver created their whole, you know, little foresty kind of, you know, atmosphere there. There's no doubting when you put on an Emperor album, oh, this is Emperor, you know. Then you put on Immortal, and it's Blashirk and Frost Realms and Ravens, you know, spewing out of the speakers. And this thing, I have no idea why. And as you said, you know, we were all super young. I don't know, something made all these nerdy kids, because that's what we were. We're all nerds. We have all been into history. We, you know, kind of, you dig into myths and fiction and all that to kind of escape school and peer pressures. And I think we were lucky that the right people met at the right times. and had those instant sparks because everyone was super aggressive. So it's not like it was easy to come up to us. If me and a couple of guys from Gehenna was sitting on the bus going downtown and, hey guys, oh, you're from that band, can we hang out? Fuck no, we can't fucking hang out. We're gonna kill you, kind of thing, you know. We didn't even hang out with Carpathian Forest, and they lived 20 minutes down the road. There was no contact between Carpathian Forest and Gehenna ever until we got grown men and met in Oslo, you know, many years later.
So when the bands were young, there was a real competition to kind of see who could push things the furthest, or who could, or at the very least, you were pushing each other in terms of, band X puts out this record, and then the next band goes out and they go, well, we're going to top this and we're going to put out, this record.
It was super inspiring because at the simultaneous as having like this kind of, not a competition, but this urge to create even a bigger, emotional landscape, because that's what this kind of music is. It's soundscapes, it's like classical music, actually, a lot of this kind of thing. And and then I remember, we were getting tapes, and the drummer from Gehenna brought back the master tape for In the Nightside Eclipse, and we were doing the first Gehenna stuff, or maybe we were writing the second spell. And, putting on that tape first time ever and just hearing In the Nightside Eclipse, just jumping out at you, it takes your whole soul to another level. You just look down at your guitar and it's like, okay, I gotta up the fucking ante here. And I have to do, but not in this, not in a technical form. It was never like, oh, my fingers need to move faster. It was never about that. It's like, getting that right riff. Doesn't matter if you just move your fingers one time during the riff. Just getting that, and getting all. Then you heard, the guys from Hades come out with their stuff, and it's like, wow, they're pretty close to Bathory. And it's like, then the first Satyricon came out, and which is like an amazing album. It just triggered one thing, triggered the other, and I think that also stopped a bit as all the bands got rolling and had 2, 3, 4 albums under the belt. It's just, and as I said, that's when that kind of ghost kind of snuck up on all our backs. With you created something very special out of nothing. Do it again. And you're 25 years old or 30 years old, and it's like, I don't remember how I did it, because there was no rhyme or reason for this at all,
That's the thing. It's like, when music is created almost purely off emotion, like so if I go back to a song like Detsom en Gangbar on the third Burzum record, for example, I mean, that is, it's the simplest riff, but it is pure fucking hatred. As soon as you hear that, when the da 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 da, when that kicks in, it's like, Jesus Christ, it's the fucking apocalypse that's about to break out. And it's this most super simple riff. Like, even when I was talking the other day on the news rant about Jevel, and I was saying, like, the one thing about Bard's drumming that I love so much is he fucking assaults the drum kit. Yeah. Like, there's so much feeling in the way that he plays. He's much less technical than Trim, for example, but I much prefer him to Trim as a drummer because of the amount of.
He wants to go through those. That's the punk way of playing, in a way. You don't think about, the mastery of this. You just fucking do it, and you fucking feel it when you do it. And it must have been so fun to have been, Pitten sitting in the studio, watching this one lunatic in your studio, going from instrument to instrument, just fucking raging, and fuck you all, and I'm going to show the guys in Oslo, and fuck you, because that's what's in that, it's his hate for everyone and wanting everyone to just bow down before the altar of Burzum, and you can hear it. You can definitely hear it. He's going for it there,
Oh yeah, no, without a shadow of a doubt. But what you're saying now makes so much sense, because I've kind of thought about it a lot, and I, as I said before, on this podcast, there's kind of this dip in black metal towards the end of the 90s, and then it becomes about people. Either bands became really experimental, and bands like Octurus started becoming like really big, and then there's also this other undercurrent of really like wimpiness. People, album covers of grown men crying by the river, all that sort of shit. And then in 2000, I think 2003, 2004, Like for me, I think the real paradigm shift to get black metal back to where it should be was Gorgoroth putting out Twilight of the Idols. Like when that album came out, I remember hearing that for the first time, and I was like it like the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and it was like, this is like turbocharged violence.
Yeah.
And it's like, Gaul in particular to me is like the center of that record. Like he just sounds so fucking menacing. And same thing with Ad Majorem Satanas Gloriam, like it's next level shit. And then I feel like all of black metal just kind of followed suit, and it's turned into the thing that it has that it has now, which I have my own views on. We can talk about that in a little bit, but I want to just get back to Burzum again. We spoke about Euronymous. I would assume you met Varg as well.
Yeah, met him in the shop there. Just standing in the shop. I only met him a couple of times, but it was just a guy. Yeah. And they're all kind of into pushing out this majestic feeling, that they want you to kind of really like be afraid. And I grew up with junkies and bikers, man. I was never afraid. It was just like a observation kind of thing.
And also people that are like that, they themselves typically are afraid. Just on a man-to-man level. I've always found guys that go out of their way to try and be intimidating. They themselves feel intimidated. Yeah. The most truly intimidating men I've ever met in my life are guys that will never in a million years try to make you feel intimidated, but do not get on their bad side. There's just
something about them, you can meet, and it's not about size. I've met this tiny little guy from the Russian mafia 25 years ago, and he's the most spooky fucking person I ever met in my whole life. And he was this tiny little fella in this little brown jacket, but he just had this thing that would make good old Vladimir even go, fuck, shit,
no, this is not for me.
Yeah. And and I was young, so I was like, and we were dealing a lot of dope and stuff, and I was like, ooh, shit. I remember I told my friend, like, we're not gonna fuck up this shit up, we're gonna pay, and we're gonna
Well, so I remember, if I think about people that I've met in my life that I've actually thought was like properly intimidating, Vinny Stigma is a dude that one of the only people I've ever met where I've shaken their hand and it was like he was super friendly, really nice, but there was just something in the back of my mind that was like, you do not fuck around with this guy. There's something about this dude that's just a little off kilter. You don't want to get on his bad side.
I've heard people, just overhearing people going on tours and stuff, and I hear a lot of people is like, yeah, I'll fucking take on the Mayhem guys, or fuck Marduk, who the fuck do they? Yeah, go into that, go into that Marduk room on that festival, and you go, fuck you guys, I'm gonna fucking teach you something. You will be taught a lesson immediately.
Yeah.
There are people around, and as we said, it's not about size or anything. Some people just have that, that thing.
It's about how they carry themselves. Have you ever seen a documentary? I think so. It's three separate documentaries. The first one I think was called "The Iceman Speaks." It's about Richard Kuklinski. He was a hitman for the mob in the 1980s. But the whole nickname, the Iceman, was from the fact that this guy doesn't really. I've
seen some interviews with him. I'm not sure if it's from that documentary, but I've seen him been talking about,
Yeah. Like
very cold, calm, he's very stoic, and shit.
Like super, calm and collected in the way that he speaks. And I remember watching that and thinking to myself, that's the, if you want to really scare the shit out of another human being as a man, that's the way to do it. Because if you're in a conflict situation with somebody, guys starting on you and things like that, and all you do is you speak very calmly back to them. But what you're saying to them is some cold shit. It's like in the back of that guy's mind, he goes, this guy's used to this level of violence, which is why he's not responding in an emotional way whatsoever. This is just, the way things are done as far as he's concerned. Yeah. But yeah, I absolutely, to the point you were making, I think it's about how you carry yourself. You can be a fucking 4'10", borderline midget of a man, but if you carry yourself in the right way, if you're Joe Pesci on Casino, you're going to be scary. So.
And I grew up like that, growing up with mostly people that's 20, 25, 30 years older than me. When they got going, full of dope and speed and 100 beers and stuff like that, and listening to Metallica and Slayer, and just fucking going for it. Even though they were never there to fuck around with me, sometimes you get in a confrontational situation, and when you're that young, you have only one way out of it. It's you have to dare to stare that guy in the fucking eyes, even if he's 30 years older than you, and just, well, you can probably kill me, but I will take this frying pan and I will bash you with it as much as I can until you kill me.
Yeah. The guys on speed and he hears Die by the Sword, and it's like, oh god, tonight's gonna be wild.
I had a couple of times when I was growing up, I was really young. I was 9 years old when I started hanging out with these guys, and they just let me sit in a corner and they were just going for it. And I was, especially with Ride the Lightning, when that came on 3-4 in the morning, and guys been drinking like 50 beers and they were shooting up speed and smoking morphine, and the pills were flowing, and there's just this on-growing beast that you just know that this is going to go fucking off the rails soon. And it of course always did. People shooting through the walls with rifles, and police coming and getting people, and people dying of overdose, and it's like, wow. I thought it was really intense and cool, and that's probably caught up with me a bit when I grew up as well, because it all wasn't cool,
Yeah.
But I was sort of sitting in the middle of it. It was just like all this music, I remember when Orgasmatron came out, and the whole room is like possessed. There's like people so stoned out of their minds, but they're still moving to Orgasmatron,
Mm-hmm. Who did it? I mean, I always thought that the Satyricon cover of Orgasmatron was one of the best covers I've heard of a song, because it was like they took that and they made that their own.
Yeah.
Really, really good. I've got my views on latter day Satyricon. I was down for the cause with Satyricon all the way up to and including Age of Nero. And from there, things got like, I actually even the self-titled record had a couple of okay songs on, but then Deep Calleth Upon Deep comes out, and it's like, oh my god, this fucking sucks. This is where you can't be in this. You just don't belong in black metal anymore if this is the kind of crap you're going to be turning out.
I have to be honest, and I have no idea how many albums or what albums they've come out with the last years, and I haven't listened to them.
Yeah.
Of all sorts of personal reasons, since I played with them, and
I was about to say, you were there for the early days. Now, here's a question for you. I had read a article way back, I think when I got the Shadow Throne, and I was just starting to get into Satyricon, and again, like all these bands, to a 15, 16-year-old boy in South Africa who, the only way I can find out about these bands is through Metal Maniacs and whatever I can see in magazines and stuff. So you have a very different view of what's going on there versus what's really going on there. But I remember reading an article where they said something to the effect of Satyricon had never played live, I think, up to the Shadow Throne. And then they agreed to play a couple of one-off shows, which I guess is around about the time that you started playing a little bit for them. But the rumor was, or at least the article had suggested, that Satyr had actually erected a barbed wire fence in front of the stage to stop stage timers from coming on. Is that true, or was it ever true?
It was, there was, but it's getting mixed up, because that's when we played with, it was us in Satyricon and Dissection and Dark Throne at Easter Eve in 1996, and Dark Throne had this barbed wire going over, and I don't remember, there was talks about how funny it would be if headbangers would get stuck and stuff in this, but it was not a Satyricon thing to put up that.
Okay. So it wasn't Satyr's idea.
Mixed up with that, and as far as I know, up until that concert and the following Nemesis Divina tour that I did with them, Satyricon had never played live ever. And when we played in Oslo in 1994 with Gehenna and Gorgoroth and Marduk, Dissection, you name it, all the bands. And on that little mini festival, Satyricon and Ulver was supposed to play as well, but they are the two bands who kind of pulled out from that festival.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went on stage with them, there was no stage experience. Me and Ted, or Nocturnal Breed, we had pretty good. Been playing for on stage for about 10 years, both of us, but the other guys were pretty new to it. So I know Satyr needed to kind of, you need to figure out what you're going to do. You have no idea what you're doing on the stage until. So his first gig is a full packed Rockefeller in Oslo, with 2,000 people opening for Darkthrone. So that's a pretty cool first gig for him. But yeah, I noticed how he kind of needed to. On small stages, he used to have his Morning Star, his mace, swinging around, just felt nice. And back in those days, when he played in East Germany, there was a lot of pretty right-leaning people in full camouflage, the big boot boys, you have 24 of those standing in a corner, and we were like, 90-pound skinny little black metal guys from Norway. So you felt threatened. So I played with a knife as well on all those gigs. Every Satyricon gig I did, I had a big knife, and one of the nights actually a bunch of skinheads tried to kind of rip it out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hold on, something happened with a.
I can still see and hear you fine, by the way.
You can.
Okay, yeah. Now you're tilted sideways. There you go.
Oh, there I'm back.
Now.
Oh, there's
now the camera's off.
Hold on, my phone is doing something. Oh, it's trying to open the Gmail. Hold on a second here.
No worries.
I fucking hate this. This makes me feel 660 years old.
Don't worry about that.
I'm impressed to actually get this whole thing set up, because I'm the kind of person that you don't want me touching your laptop if you got some important work on it, because it will fuck up,
No, it's fine. So going back to Gehenna, when you listen back to those records, how do you feel about them now? Do you ever go back to those albums that you appeared on, and kind of what are your thoughts on them when you hear them now?
Actually, Gehenna is one of those I actually go back to and listen to. And probably once a year, I listen to each of the Gehenna albums I played on. And it's really weird because it's so long ago. It's closing in on 30 years soon. So it's like I'm just listening to this band. It's pretty nice because I can hear the album now. The whole thing, and I have to pinch myself every time, is this us? Fuck, it's us. And I remember all the chaos and all the shit, everyone was going through, and it's like, and we made this. So yeah, it still amazes me, and it's lovely albums, and some of the albums, probably the music I'm most proud of, out of everything I made, because it's so fucking heartfelt and different. I urge people to find a band that sounds like the two first Gehenna albums. There is no bands that sounds like that, and we were really, really lucky to have, even though we did all the keyboard stuff, it doesn't go all Dimmu Borgir, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And tell me, how come that came to an end? Why did you end up leaving the band?
Of course, there was a little chaos in my life. We had all been in and out of jail and doing court cases for church burnings, and I had a attempted murder case, and it was, everything was really stressed out. We had police razzias, all the time coming into my little apartment. I ran away from home when I was 17 because I couldn't deal with, parents and all that. So I got a little apartment downtown in Stavanger where we lived. And after we did the second spell, there was just the first thing was that Morbid Angel came out with that Domination album. And even though that is a great album and it's very before its time, it influenced a couple of the guys in Gehenna to the point where Morbid Angel was all they fucking thought about. And that was really creeping in on things. And I made a couple of songs or some riffs and stuff for the Malice album, but during that process I just started to notice that the whole dark kind of occult feeling, it started to evaporate. And we got into 1995 and the whole scene was kind of, even then I started to feel like, something's a little bit off. So I don't know. I don't remember actually the days around this, but just one day I just got up and said, well, I'm going to Oslo. I'm going to try something else. And I went straight to Oslo and started in Satyricon. So
And
because
then
I thought that would be a much more occult experience, because that was what I was driving for. It was never money or anything. It was that ultimate feeling. But little did I know that Satyricon was not an occult band anymore. And,
no,
you know.
did Satyr didn't have his vineyard by that point, did he? His vineyard
No,
in his Porsches.
no, he lived in a tiny little cottage in the middle of a big cornfield, kind of, or a wheat field. Like this little annex thing next to the big, proper farmhouse, and he lived in there. And so that kind of feeling was really there. But when I came into the band, it was like one foot was still in that old wood, and the other foot was down in Oslo at the fancy shops and skyline apartments and nice restaurants and wineries.
A very, very different lifestyle, very different approach.
Very different. And all of us, both me and Frost and Nocturnal Culto, we didn't have fuck all from money. Maybe Nocturnal Culto did, because it was starting, the Dark Throne train was, starting to move there. But at least me and Frost, we didn't have shit. And Satyr, of course, being the brilliant business guy he is, people can say whatever you fucking want about Satyr, but he's a great fucking businessman. He knows what he's doing with that. So he always had money. Me and Frost never had fucking money. And for the entirety of 1995 and 1996, up until we went on the Nemesis Divina tour, we spent every day except Christmas Eve rehearsing. And 4 days a week, it was only me and Frost. And that was fucking boring. 4 hours of bass and drums. Oh, it was driving me mad. And, having no money and having to go back and forth with a boat out to where we had the rehearsal place. And I remember Frost we were sitting in the boat. It was really cold and shit. And, he has his little, high top hat on and his black metal stuff and all the spikes, and he always has makeup on and stuff like that. And up from his pocket he drags this fish fingers pack and he's down in the fish fingers and it's up, and I look at him, it's like, that's not even defrosted, man. Yes, it is a little bit defrosted. So he put it in his mouth and he just, with his teeth, he just scraped off that first orange layer. And it was stuck with that little frozen fish thing. So we can wait for 5 minutes, and then he went back again. Scraped off a new layer.
He has always struck me as a very, very different cat to Satyr, and I've always been curious as to why that relationship has endured for as long as it has. Because
as are all of us. I have no idea. That's the first thing that struck me, and I thought about the rest of my life, because those are so different. It's incredible that they can work this out, but it's I don't know. I've seen them up close, and there is a machinery thing there working back and forth. They draw something from each other. I don't know what it is, but yeah, so, it's very different.
So the as far as the old guard is concerned, and we're going to get to Nocturnal Breed in just a second, but the guys from that scene and from that time, are there still any people that you're close to?
I'm close to Frost still. I met him like half a year ago down in Oslo. I was just stopping by a record shop, and we're having a big hug and stuff like that. And most of the guys, but we are not social beings, so it's not like I'm sitting here like, Trim, how are you doing, man? And so we are not like that. So
Say
we
off,
meet
what's up?
Whenever it's like a floating thing. We meet whenever we meet, and some people you have on Facebook and stuff, some people are not on Facebook or social media at all, and like a guy like Gal, for example, he's not the guy you just up with the phone and like, how are you doing today? The wrong person.
What's up, mate? Did you see his appearance on this podcast?
Yeah. That's what I started. That's the one I started with, actually. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. He was. I mean, I really liked speaking to him. But as I've said many times before, it took a while to kind of get to that point where I'm like, okay. It's like think about it like a video game. I'm shooting laser beams around the fucking shield all the time, and eventually, okay, as soon as I mentioned wine, all right, finally we're through. I do think if I could do a face to face, I think it'll be a lot better.
He's very nice, but he's very intelligent too, and he's very true to his word and what he's doing and who he is, and of course he's intelligent, so he likes fucking with you a bit, so
Yeah.
he knows that people, get the chills around them, and he's sitting there staring, and sometimes
Well,
he
I
just
mean, I
gets
still
yes and
laugh at
no's
that
and
shit that he did to those idiots from Vice.
yeah,
I thought it was
that's
fucking funny, and especially when he told me more of the story. Like, he basically left them up there for a whole day. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And like I kind of intimated before, I do think that he is one of the main people, and I don't think he realizes it. I don't think a lot of people realize it. My personal view is I think he's one of the main people responsible for black metal kind of. I think in some ways, between him and Mortus joining Marduk and like just a couple of things happening, I think they got black metal back on track. I think that the scene could very easily have gone off the rails and just turned into like another fad that, in 20 years time, people look back at and they go, oh, that was funny, wasn't it? And it's not.
I think you're very right there, because if you remove that Gorgoroth feeling in the start of the 2000s and the backbone, if you can call it like that, that Marduk has kept up, because that's what Marduk is doing. They're keeping us, a backbone of fucking iron, just plowing forth. There's an album coming, there's a tour coming, there's never, they don't veer off the track at all. They just keep on going. And Gorgoroth was like that too. So yeah, you're very right there. And I think also like a band like Beherit from Finland, it's great that they are so fucking antisocial and knotted up in their woods in there, that they people know nothing, and there's just this very sparse few releases, but it's good. I like the Engram album and stuff. That's one of those who was like, yeah, you still got it, man. No idea what the fuck you're doing in there in Finland, but it's nice, and I like that mysticism, that the band is a little bit untouchable. Like, no one gets to really know Marduk or Gorgoroth or Beherit, and that was the case back in the day too. No one got to know the Emperor guys. It was just this mystical band with this amazing music. All that stuff has got very much killed off by social medias and all these kind of things during the years. But and growing up too, when you were a kid, when I was listening to all the metal albums, all those bands were so big, they might just as well have been gods, and going to see Iron Maiden, or I went to see Alice Cooper in the 80s and stuff like that. It was just, you're just like standing there dreaming. You don't ever expect to be one of those, or to even meet them, or to it's just like, and that, I think that mysticism is a bit important, and some bands are good, and I don't mean the bands who's wearing masks, because I'm getting fucking tired of people and their masks and their, having their mothers fucking socks over their heads. There's a lot of them now. I thought it was just a couple of them, and now I've been recording and stuff for 1.5 years, and then I kind of pop up and I look around in the scene.
Like there's an awful lot of bands that are wearing hoodies and masks on stage.
Yeah. Why can't I just fucking leave it with one? It's okay when one pop out, or two, or but now it's like a whole flock of them,
Yeah, that's the thing. I've always loved. I think was one of the things I've always really loved, and I've expressed this on the podcast many times. But I've always liked a degree of intelligence to, like, I've always loved rebellion, and I've always loved that confrontational aspect of metal, and especially black metal, very much. But I've always, the people I've gravitated towards the most are always the people that have done it in a very kind of targeted, very intelligent way. And again, that's probably where my admiration and my respect for Gall comes into such a strong degree, because not only do I think that the work he did with Gorgoroth, I've said my piece on that, but Galsverd, I mean, I think a guy that can do a record that captures the black metal essence the way that he does without even screaming once, I mean, I think that's fucking incredible. And to me, it translates through to bands like Akrakoka, who I've raved about on this podcast for years. Those early Akrakoka records, when they were the suits, no one looked like them, no one did the stuff that they did, and there was like a sense of real conviction to what they were doing. Mortis is another character like that. No fanfare, no promotion, just drops a note on the, I think it was last year with the 8th of December. there's a new album out on Friday. And it's like, Funeral Mist album comes out. And I mean, again, when that Funeral Mist record kicks in, like the first time the guitar like plays, you just really know it's like, this is going to rip my face off.
Well, that passion is very important, to have that passion, and it's hard sometimes to kind of try to teach people what that passion is when you have, like, we played with a million, bands and younger bands, and people asking me all kinds of things, but you can put any band in front of me, I can tell you, this guy is gonna make it, and this guy is gonna make it. The rest of you can just start doing something else, because you need that fucking thing.
Yeah.
That
absolutely.
Passion. And I think in the long run, this shows with the bands, because there's so many bands, but the good ones will keep on going, and they will be put up there, and the bad ones will just disappear,
And that's how it's always been. But I will definitely say I do think there are an awful lot of great black metal bands that started post 2000, and that they have taken the scene into directions that I think is fucking awesome. Panzerfaust is a great example of that. Ecclese, I mean, you hear that Ecclese record, the last one they put out, Melano, and I mean, it's like, it's the same feeling that you get when you hear Ad Majorem, Satanas Gloriam. It's like it grabs your innards and like yanks your guts around. That's the so I'm again, I've ranted about this many times, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But I've spoken a lot about like the old guard hating on the new bands, because I think a lot of them say those things because I think it's a degree of, and I get it. I've seen, I'm growing older. I know you're in your mid 40s now. I'm 42. As you grow older, there is a part of you that gets a little jealous of the younger bloods. You like when I'm in the gym, for example, I look at the people around me training and I go, I have to outdo you no matter what it takes out of me. I have to be stronger, but I know there's going to come a point when I'm not going to be able to do that anymore. And I think that's true of everything when it comes to men. I think there are male musicians and guys that we all know that will look at a younger band, and there will be a degree of jealousy there. We spoke about, I don't know if you want to bring it up, and I'm looking at the time, so I know I can edit it out if I have to.
I have all my afterwards. It's no problem.
But I mean, Nurgle, I think honestly that's where a lot of his bullshit comes from. I think it's jealousy. I think the guy is clued up enough to go to a festival and go, Jesus, I see these bands playing. Behemoth is not the shiny new band on the block that they used to be, in 2008 or in 2000, even back to Zoskio Cultus, when there was a real hype around them.
Why he is a bit intimidated by that, I think, is because his kind of package and the package that Behemoth is doing, that can be bought.
Yeah.
So he knows that you got some rich kids coming down here with some backing or a nuclear blast kind of budget. It can be bought and fixed,
Yeah.
And put together like I call it Lego bands, like,
Lego bands.
Yeah, I've seen several bands. Just everyone goes to the same store and buy the same fucking, armor and outfits, and you have the makeup girls doing the makeups with all the fading and the shadings. That shit can be bought, but the music can't really be bought. The honesty and the shit you put into that music. So I think he's a little afraid that there will be others who will just climb above him on bigger budgets and
well, in my opinion, I think Area have done that. I think Area have kind of looked at what he does, and I think they've taken it a step further. I really like that last Area record, but I think in terms of the area that Behemoth play in, the more I think about it, the more and you've kind of got my brain turning on this again. I do think Behemoth in many ways are a bit of a one-trick pony music wise. Yeah. And I think that he realizes that he's turned the trick very well a couple of times now. It's starting to get a little stale. Any new stuff that he puts in doesn't work. We saw that with the previous record, the fucking, children singing and all that crap. So the, it's like, where do you go next? And exactly as you say, you can make up for it by putting up, real spectacle. But at the end of the day, spectacle can be bought. But and spectacle is great. I love spectacle. Yeah. But emotion can't be bought, and playing with genuine feeling can't be bought.
That's where the spectacle becomes perfect. Like the tour that Merciful Fate is doing now, that's spectacle and that full dedication gone perfect.
Yeah.
you don't see that with these bands. And I think bands like Dimmu Borgir also kind of run into their own ass doing this kind of same kind of production. It's like you say, where are they going to go? And I have an answer for that for all those bands. Where you're going to go? You need to go into a fucking shack in the woods with your buddies, a case of beer, and you fucking hang out there with some crappy instruments and a half drunk dude recording it, and you're making an album like in the old days. Desperate, cold, freezing, lack of food, lack of sleep, little hungover, little drunk. All that shit, you know, you scrape away all the beauty. Like with Metallica, it's like, yeah, we're Metallica, we're gonna do this death magnetic, and it's back to thrash, and it's fucking nuts, man.
Yeah,
it's fucking nuts. You know, someone needs to put you out in fucking nowhere in Denmark with a crap drum kit and some crap guitars, and just do it like in the old days. You know, just fucking listen to Diamond Head until you puke, and you make some music. You know, something like that. You know, go. For me, it's like living here in the woods. That takes me back, you know. I don't have all the albums I'm making and stuff. I'm making all mostly equipment that is more than 25 years old and half broken, and you know, just to try to preserve that old kind of crooked kind of thing, you know, because I don't want my stuff to turn out Meshuggah-like or industrialized like Behemoth or soulless like Metallica and Satyricon and a couple of other things, you know, that is just fading into piss and boredom.
But it's very true what you say, and I've joked about this, but I think that when you reach a certain level of fame, number one, you're surrounded by people that keep telling you you're great no matter what. You can turn out the biggest garbage under the sun, and the record PR people are going to say, oh man, Nurgle, this is the best song I've ever heard in my life. Never did anything better. I mean, with Metallica, you know, exponentially so. But equally, when you're that physically comfortable, right, where is your anger coming from? If I'm James Hetfield and I'm worth $185 million, what on earth do I have to be pissed off about? Nothing. Zero.
You can hear it in Lars Ulrich's snare drum.
Oh yeah, of course.
I'm gonna be so pissed off now. I'm gonna make this snare drum so angry, and it's like, that's fucking bongo drums, man.
Yeah. Well, when he's saying like Phil Rudd is the most technical drummer on earth, and it's like, I like Phil Rudd's drumming. I like AC/DC, but you know, it's not the same. It's not the same thing. And if you listen to you on Kill 'Em All, you listen to you on Ride the Lightning and on Master of Puppets versus Death Magnetic, you know, and when Hardwired to Self-Destruct, which I think is almost as bad as Death Magnetic. I just think they should have gone for what comes naturally to them now as musicians. And if I think about that, from that perspective, I think Bleeding Me is the best song that they put out since basically since anything on And Justice for All. Yeah. It's the first song that I heard them do where I heard like, there's this, you can hear this is what they genuinely want to make. So just go ahead and make that.
I can see it in them and I can hear it in them. And, you know, with a guy like Kirk Hammett, I was watching his Halloween special with Gibson guitars, which is really good, by the way. And he's still got that urge. And then I wonder what's happening in this rehearsal room. And when you're going to that fucking studio, first off, you need to kill Bob Rock.
Oh, yeah.
Scrape that fucker out. He made Dr. Feelgood and the Cult album. And that should have been it. You know, I'm not to these big ass fucking producers. It's like, come on, man, just do it in the old way. Find a why, because it is there. You know, and I don't care if James Hetfield is feeling a little sorry for himself and blah blah. Have a beer, man. Fucking have a beer, please. For God's sake. So he's up on stage crying and holding his buddies, and it's like, this is borderline, you know, Sound of Music now. What the fuck are you doing? You know, play Seek and Destroy, man, and have a beer.
That's one thing where I'm very morally conflicted about it, because it's like I get if you've had a, you know, alcohol dependency issue and you've gone to rehab for it. I'm glad he's feeling better. If he's emotionally in a better place, great. But there's such a difference between the James Hetfield of 1989. Or even 1992 and James Hetfield of 2022. It's like he was this like pro wrestler type character on stage, and he's swearing at the audience and spitting, and he's just like, you know, he was just such a great frontman, and then he just turns into such a fucking wimp. And it's like, And it's you know, he seems like a nice guy. I'm pretty sure
I'm sure he's great.
it'd be great to hang out with him, but he just
absolutely. He's everyone's uncle, you know.
yeah.
He seems like a super guy compared to, you know, his drummer, who's I don't know. But we haven't. There's one thing I was thinking about that I heard you talking about several times, and I need to take that up. That's the Belladonna Bush conflict.
Oh, dude, it's no question about it. Belladonna, terrible. Bush, great.
That's listening to a lot of your podcasts. That's the only place where I have to say I have to disagree, and I can explain to you why. Because when I was growing up, and those Armored Saints albums were coming out, and I listened to them because they did a tour with Wasp back in '85, I think. That's when I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to Armored Saint. And my stepsister was bringing home both of their first albums then. There was something wrong with his voice. And when I got to 1994 or whatever it is, I knew what it was. Bush is the first vocalist with a new metal voice.
You might be right, actually. His voice is almost like it's kind of bordering on grungy new metal. Yeah. I think you might be right.
And it never got to me. Armored Saint was one of those bands. I've had all their albums. It was never. It's like just something's fucking off with his voice. And then, of course, for me being in the scene I'm from, what happened to Anthrax in the mid '90s is just it's cringing in me. You know, I grew up on the 2-3 first Anthrax albums. And yes, Belladonna seems like an ass to hang around with. He seems like a pissy person. But for me, like Spreading the Disease, man, when I heard Madhouse and that came on TV the first time, and I'm sitting there, you know, like that Megadeth kid, you know, in his living room watching the TV. And oh, man, I was so sold. So Belladonna has this really thrashy, good feel about it, but I would never like to kind of meet him or hang out.
Yeah.
But you know, not to offend anyone, but I think Bush. I hate his vocals because it reminds me of all the shit that came, Tool and Korn and Limp Bizkit and all this. Fucking fuck. And you know, sorry to say, but Anthrax, together with Faith No More, probably they are the guys who created new metal, you know, with their
and Rage Against the Machine, I would say.
But they came in a lot later.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like even like in '88, '89, you know, something inside me was going like, hey, ooh, is it cool? Is it? Ooh, what shit? Fuck! I was going like that inside because. As I said, at the same time, I have these people around me who's going like Morbid Angel, you know, Dayside, listen to this. And then I'm having this conflicting shit going on there. It's very confusing here in Norway in those times.
Yeah. No, I'm partly slightly biased to John because I met him and he's just a phenomenal guy. And
he seems like a great guy. I just saw an interview with him. He seems like a great guy.
But I discovered Anthrax on Among the Living. And then I got into the older stuff, and then Sound of White Noise came out. And I always really liked Sound of White Noise, but bear in mind, I was 14 when it came out. So for me, it was like that sort of stuff is like, that was like, you know, that was great and it was heavy. And I really liked it. It's a record I still really like. But I must be...
For me, it took like, for a band like Pantera, it took me 20 years to like Pantera. Because when it came out, it was like this modern fucking shit. Fuck, it's Pantera and Crowbar and Plea. You know, we were going such a different direction that I had to grow up. And then I was like, well, fuck, this is a good album. So I had my revival on, you know, Cowboys from Hell in 2002 or something like that.
Yeah. No, I was a Pantera fan from the get-go. Like when I heard Walk was the first Pantera song I heard. When I heard that for the first time, it was like there was like a paradigm shift for me. It was the same as when I heard Slayer for the first time. Like the first Slayer song I heard was the first Slayer record I heard was Decade of Aggression. And I heard Hell Awaits, like when that kicked in, it was like, it was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. But yeah, Pantera was kind of the same thing.
I was super lucky when it comes to Slayer because I was on this camping trip with my dad in the summer of, it must have been 85 or 86. And I walk into this German gas station and there's this whole rack of cassettes, you know. My dad says, you can pick one. and he goes up to buy some burgers or something, and I'm standing there. It's like, I take this little black cassette with this round thing with these 4 zombie guys coming walking out.
Yeah.
I'll go into the car with my German crappy hamburger, and I put on Live Undead with Slayer for the first time. And that's like, shit, fuck, what the fuck happened now? Because the energy on that album until this day, it's almost my favorite above all Slayer albums, because the energy on Live Undead, I don't care if it's recorded in the studio or if it's live or all the myths about it, that just makes it even better. But, you know, hearing their friends going, fuck yeah, in the background while they're praying, it's like, ooh, even when I was sitting there, you know, just like 10, 11 years old, I was like goosebumps and shit, there's pictures in my head, you know, I need to go home to Oslo, play my guitar. That was amazing.
I'm with you on Live Undead. I'd say Haunting the Chapel, Live Undead have probably over the years become my favorite Slayer records. And also, just as we're talking about frontmen, the only guy that could get away on stage with being like the nice guy and still be a badass was Tom. And and it goes all the way back to Live Undead, you know, right before he does Die by the Sword. It's like, they say the pen is mightier than the sword, but we say fuck the pen, because you can die by the sword.
Even when I was that young, I was like, this is the coolest guy in the world. And you can hear his smirk when he's talking and singing. And no, Tom Araya has a beautiful personality, the way he kind of mixes the dark shit with a, you know, he seems so kind, and, you know, just compared to a couple of the other guys in that band who seems to be a little up and down. And
so here's a question for you. So first, Nocturnal Breed record came out in 1997, and as I'm kind of reading between the lines of your hatred of new metal, it was kind of that raw like grit of the first Nocturnal Breed record. Was that almost a reaction from you to what you were seeing happen in metal at the time?
Yeah, it's I've been thinking about this because it's one of those questions that comes up, and I think it's the same thing that happened with the black metal stuff. But when I was on the Nemesis Divina tour with Satyricon, I noticed that all the cogwheels were changing. It was 1996, the Easter or April of 1996, and everything in the scene was kind of changing a bit. And during that tour is the first time any of us, of course, this is one of the earliest kind of black metal tours, and it's the first time any of us had any mingling with the audience. You know, these are our fans. Not all of it was like it just made me fucking pissed off at times. And it's pretty stupid, because how can I go out there and expect these kids that came around that to understand our thing, you know, with the Norwegian thing, and we don't really want to meet or say hi or smile or do anything. And this whole thing got mixed up. So when I was on that tour, and I knew that I wouldn't be going on with Satyricon, because me and Satyr had crashed for a long time, even before the tour. And I just had this reaction. I need to do something. And again, then I started to think, okay, what is my original base in metal? And that is heavy metal, like, you know, New Wobben and that kind of stuff, you know. The same kind of music that Metallica and the Slayer guys would have been listening to when they made their stuff. So it was just a natural thing to go, well, okay, this is my rebellion, and fuck you, I'm going to do sunglass, heavy metal, thrash music with a cigar in my mouth, which is completely opposite of what the black metal people were accepting. And I did it, or we did it, and people might think it's cool now, but back in those days, Nocturnal Breed was never a cool band, man. We were all with the people like, oh, why are you wearing that denim thing, and you have these sunglasses on, and blah, 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 blah. And 5 years later, everyone's like with sunglasses and denim on, and we were always kind of like falling, you know, denim and sunglasses and cowboy boots. That wasn't cool in 1997 and 1998. And
I was about to say, you were either rocking the corpse paints or you were rocking the Adidas around that time.
Yeah,
the baggy jeans and the fucking baseball jerseys or the basketball jerseys. But I mean, the thing that I love about Nocturnal Breed, and that I've always liked about it, and so I've always been a fan of the band, is I love the fact that you kind of go back to that old style, but you've always retained the black metal edge to a degree. Like it's kind of sitting lurking in the background, you know. Like again, going back, listening over some of the old records, and Napalm Nights is an example. The title track to that record. Firstly, I've always wanted to say this to you, but that like glammy vocal that kicks in around the 8-minute mark is fucking genius. I wish you did an entire record where you just sang like that. It's absolutely brilliant.
Because there's one song on each Nocturnal Breed album where I do the Lemmy vocals, and it is purely a tribute to his way of doing vocals. But I'm lucky enough that I can twist my voice, do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, what's great about it on that song, it comes from nowhere, because the song has kind of been rolling, and then you got this cool like break, but it's almost like a black metal style break, and then these vocals come over. It's like, wow. it's so anyway, but yeah, like I said, on every song, no matter what direction the band has gone, that edge, that sort of the dark vibe of black metal is always there in the background, keeping the keeping too much of the joy at bay. So,
it's a good mixture there, for me, some of those old, like Sodom was always a little rock and roll, but also a little dangerous at the same time when I was young. That kind of thing, like Lemmy, he's mysterious. We add a little Motorhead on top. It's like it's a mixture of all these things that we're really influenced by, but the whole point was to kind of make it ours. And it probably sounds cliche doing that, but we never sat down and said, okay, now we're going to try to be like this or be like that. It's just like a mixture. And then we try to make it not sound like a half-assed cover band, but try to add that little thing. And that's where I think, I bring in that black metal thing with we're not afraid to use, the keyboards and stuff, but if we do it with an old Casio synth from 1988 just to make that crap synthesizer sound, That is really spooky, like an album like Darkthrone Soulside Journey. It's got some of the best keyboard stuff ever, because it's the most crappy fucking keyboard ever. And with a little echoes and stuff on it, it sounds beautiful. So it's just been like a natural thing to mix all those things up.
I now, again, with Darkthrone, I have my issues with some of the stuff that Nocturno has been saying, over the last couple of years. But there's no taking away from the fact, like when I, ignoring the original Trinity, but when you hear a record like Hate Them, I mean, fuck me, that's a good album. Just that opening with like oh really. The opening with that, the weird kind of echo and the sound, and then like the guitar, like it kicks in. It's like it's such a statement that record makes. I feel
that one. It was Total Death and Hate Them. I think it was those two that they kind of chiseled out the songs on the days we didn't rehearse, or at other times that we were rehearsing with Satyricon, because Darkthrone and Satyricon were rehearsing at the same place. And it was kind of cool, you walk in on those two guys in a little room in the middle of winter, and it's just like, and you hear some of those songs, and it's like, that's why I think both those albums have a traditional Darkthrone good feel about them, because it was something about, just those two in an old house on an island, or not an island, but a half island peninsula kind of thing. And it came through on those. I think I also, have my own thoughts about stuff that has come after that, but I think those two still represents that, that Darkthrone hatred, cold feeling.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and obviously with the stuff you're doing. So you just to get people up to speed, because as much as Nocturnal Breed isn't exactly churning out one record a year, you're a very busy man musically. Just so everyone knows, and so I make sure I haven't missed out anything. What are you all involved in right now?
Well, I get caught up in my own head and my own creations. So a lot of the stuff I'm involved with is my own creations.
Yeah.
Because And my argument for this, because there has been people who said like, oh, why do you need to have like a million bands? And it's not about that, and it's not about like, oh, I want to expose myself to everyone. But I don't want to mix up the genres. I don't want to have a Nocturnal Breed album suddenly having some electronica shit coming into it. So then I do industry electronica thing on the side, like I was. And sometimes I'm in a very atmospheric, I'm a Anglophile, that I mean they call it. I love everything British, Victorian times and stuff like that. So I have my little side project, Combat, which is just dedicated to that kind of, slow, doomy, weird ass things. And I have Svartalv, my solo project that I've been doing since the Gehenna days. And then that's basically the black metal stuff that I never could use in Gehenna or Satyricon or 1349 or any other band I've been involved with. So that turned into the Svartalv project. And then I have Cold Orbit, that is just purely science fiction music, soundtrack music. And that is a project that I'm actually working on soundtrack for a movie now with. So that's just a complete other direction. My love for everything science fiction, growing up on Blade Runner and, all that kind of stuff. So that's my tribute to that. And again, it's just so I don't mix everything up. I hate that bands like, again, back to Ulver, who have some great old Ulver albums with a total forest fairy tale feeling. And then you just go total to the right or to the left or whatever you want, and there's electronica music. And I don't need that. If I like a band, I like it for a fucking reason, and it's the feeling they churn out. So then I'm more than happy. Then maybe Metallica should have done that. If all the guys in Metallica had a little side project, maybe they'd just stay fresh in the middle.
I completely agree, mate. I absolutely agree. I always thought that when the day I heard Mama Said for the first time, I was like, you know what, James could very easily have turned out a really great like country record, and everyone would have thought, great, bit different, but that's cool. But why do you have to include this on a Metallica record? And worst of all, why did you have to do Lulu? But I mean, that's it's a different story.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's even Lou Reed is turning over in his grave, going like, I shouldn't have done that.
Definitely.
And I like both. I like Metallica and I like Lou Reed, but that pairing is like, I don't know.
It's terrible. It does not work on any. And I agree with you. I like maybe Lou Reed not so much, but I certainly like Velvet Underground. But I just don't. I just don't think it ever worked. That group together. I didn't really think, to be perfectly honest with you, Metallica should work with all that many guest musicians. Like if you think about you go across the spectrum, because I listen to a lot of music outside of metal, you go across the spectrum of great musicians. Could I see them like some of my favorite non-metal musicians? Could I see them doing something with Josh Homme? No, it would sound fucking awful. I love Josh Homme. Could I see them do something with, when he was still alive, Mark Lanigan? Absolutely not. Yeah. It would sound absolutely dreadful. They're just not a band, I think, that lend themselves to that kind of, to that sort of
It's same thing like with Slayer. Slayer going to have a guest vocalist coming. Who the fuck? No one wants a guest vocalist in Slayer,
No.
Just go fucking Slayer. Or King Diamond. King Diamond has never, as far as I know, King Diamond has never done anything with any other bands. He does the little guest things with Metallica and stuff, but he's never like had a side projects or done this or that or had people in. No, it's just like, it's fucking King Diamond or Merciful Fate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, one thing you didn't mention in terms of projects, the one project you shared on your Facebook, which I listened to and fucking loved, Ekrom.
Oh yeah.
So that's just a 3-track demo that these dudes did.
No, yeah, they are producing a full album, but they have released these 2-3 tracks just to kind of like, get a little buzz around it. And it's pretty hard, actually, coming from Norway and trying to do a black metal act. It can be pretty hard. There's so many fucking cows in the barn now, you have to do something. So they just put it out there. And I'm not like in the band. I just did one of the lyrics and I did vocals on the Norwegian song there. Which is actually, that song is pretty, for me, it's a special one because that song is about my great-great-grandfather. who were the last person in Norway who was executed with an axe.
Holy shit! Why was he executed?
He killed a guy, ripped him apart in the woods, just an hour away from where I live now. And he had been in jail for 46 years of his life. And when he was in his 70s, he was just this. They called him the Candyman. His original fucking Candyman. He was walking around from markets to markets, the medieval markets, or this is Victorian time. This is Victorian markets, and he was kind of walking around, and they, sold candy to the kids and stuff. And he just bashed this young fella in the woods. He was catching a ride with him, and he just, with his axe, just smashed his head up, took all his things. And then they found out later that he's been walking from Trondheim, where the big old church is, and on the pilgrim route. And they think he probably killed people during that pilgrim route. And when he came down here, he was caught, and he actually took a big dump in the police sheriff's office the day before they chopped his head off.
Outlaw until the very end.
Yeah, so he's like he's my great grandfather. So it's pretty weird that the axe that chopped his head off is hanging in a museum in Oslo.
Jesus.
So that was really inspiring. So when the guys you want to do a song about this, and I was like, fuck yeah. I really want to do that, because that's very heartfelt kind of. It was really weird studying my ancestor like this, and going back and reading the stuff they wrote in the church books. And
but that's I mean, as I said, I was really impressed with that. I thought it was I thought that was
that sounds
fucking
it sounds old. Finally, there's some bands who's doing a really good thing, and trying to come back to that old feeling again. I think Ekrom is really tapping into that. It's kind of emperorish, kind of, it's really good.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is Conjuration. I really like that Conjuration EP, but you guys only ever did the one EP back in 2011, but you didn't do anything else after that.
No, well, some of those on that Necro Creation collection. Some of those songs are demo songs that were made after, but it was just a little side project, because we didn't want to mix, death metal and Nocturnal Breed and stuff. So there's 3 people from Nocturnal Breed in Conjuration, and we just did it for a little while. And during the live shows, we only did 3 concerts, and something about it, because I go pretty hard into stuff and I do the lyrics, and like there I created the whole concept, doing all the horror sounds and trying to actually get it to be scary, scary as audio can be. And I kind of fell into that rabbit hole, and I was standing on stage with this 2.5 meter inverted cross, like blood and meat and shit all over me, and it's like, I'm turning into Pelle now. I'm turning into dead.
Yeah.
I felt it, when I was going home. My girlfriend was like, dude, there's you got shit with you, man. It's kind of taking you over.
Yeah.
So I stepped away from it a bit, because it was like, I'm too old now. I can't fall into that, that thing.
Yeah. Well, which is completely understandable. I know one of the other topics that you're obviously very fond of returning to as as source material for lyrics is lyrics about war. Question for you, just because I saw this on Sunday and I was absolutely fucking blown away. Have you watched that remake of All Quiet on the Western Front?
No.
Unbelievable. Absolutely incredible. I was terrified that they would fuck it up and that, they would turn it into something woke, but fortunately that's not the case. And I will also say it is like emotionally one of the most like harrowing things I've ever watched about the First World War. I mean, like the only thing that I'd say comes close is like the Apocalypse First World War documentary. That's about it. But I mean, there were some moments where you really like, it feels like someone's like just punching you in the stomach when you're watching it. It is outstanding. And you talk about soundtracks and scores. The score in that film is phenomenal.
I will go check it out, definitely. Because, of course, as you say, there's some woke shit coming out now that, out of 10 films I put on or TV series, I only watched like 10 minutes and I was like, this is fucking bullshit. This is complete fucking rubbish.
Yeah.
Like
No,
I
same.
was stupid enough to put on Into with a Vampire. Oh,
I
fuck me
haven't seen that yet.
sideways. Oh, fuck me. It's like in the first 5 minutes, I'm just sitting there gaping, like, really?
Yeah.
Really? You're gonna rape this book from the very first letter? Just fucking rape everything that woman wrote? No, I don't get this woke thing. And it's nice to be here in Norway because people don't react as much. And it's nice to be in this scene, actually.
Mm.
Because, as an example, we have the official Speed Metal Legions, the fan page for Nocturnal Breed that I'm not running. There's our management is running it, and we put up a picture there from the Tools of the Trade session where one of those stripper girls we're having with us, she's just out in the sand, and we're all grabbing all her limbs and just showing everything to Mama,
Yeah.
And it's still up there. It's been up there for like 4 or 5 months. No one has reported it. No one has complained. It's up there on Facebook, a full-on porn pic. And I think that's kind of nice. It tells something about the scene that we're kind of packing around us.
I was just about to say though, because if anything, Nocturnal Breed is like one of those bands that would, without a shadow of a doubt, come into the crosshairs of the woke, just based on your lyrics.
Yeah, a song like "Bless the Whore."
Yeah, definitely.
But to my defense on that one, the song is about the fact that if we didn't have whores, be it man or woman, the male population on this planet will have ripped this planet apart, and we would all be gone by now. Because that outlet in war times and in old times, all that fucking, there's a reason for it. Because if that fucking isn't done, you're gonna bash someone's head in instead, and all that trauma and all that, So the whores have constantly been there. They've calmed down the kings and the emperors and the warriors, and they're the go-betweens with presidents, and they're kind of like they're a part of the glue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like people have said before. If you want to, put an end to these like crazy war-torn countries, just parachute in like thousands of very beautiful women into the country. It can't be hundreds, because if there's scarcity, people fight over resources. But if parachute in like thousands of beautiful women into the most war-torn parts of the war-ravaged parts of the Middle East, and watch the war stop fucking very quickly.
That's true. I think that would be true down in Ukraine now too. If we just took every Scandinavian blonde model and we just shipped them down to that border war now, fuck, everything would stop. Those Russians wouldn't know where to do with their dicks, and it would all stop.
Well, you mentioned earlier about the the socialist stare. I remember spending a night in Moscow, and the one thing that I took away from that, I said to my parents when I spoke to them about the experience, I said, like, my experience of Moscow is if you found a way to surgically remove all joy and happiness from a human being, I would say that would describe about 90% of the people that I saw there. And the weird thing about it was, like, I saw a lot of incredibly beautiful women, guys that look a bit like they escaped from Chernobyl, but it's like everyone just seemed to be incredibly downtrodden and despondent and miserable. And I was like, how fucking bad must this have gotten? And if you once you get to know the history, then obviously you realize just how bad it gotten. It was absolutely terrible. But it's like, I think if you see it firsthand, there's not a stronger indictment against fucking communism than just actually being in Russia and seeing what those people look like. It literally, you witness the end result of crushing the human spirit underfoot for many years on end.
And they've been doing it for so long time. It's, most people only know like little bits of the Russian history, but they have actually been crushing their own people for a couple of fucking millennia. They're world champions at making you feel like you're dead inside and like a robot, And I'm sure you come from South Africa. How was it when you grew up, when it was closer to the apartheid stuff? It was
during apartheid
stare?
No, it was. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. It was growing up was, for me, was wonderful. It was. There was a lot of stuff about the religion and stuff in the country that pissed me off. So there's a lot of religious orthodoxy in the country, and especially in my school, that used to really, grind at me, because me being a little bit, or being interested in different things to the average kids that were with me in school, it causes you to be singled out quite a lot and targeted for anything. But I mean, for the most part, I had a fucking great time growing up.
I was thinking about the stuff used, because like here up in fantastic Scandinavia, people are talking about poverty, and they know poverty, and you don't fucking know poverty until you've really seen it, and we haven't seen it in Europe like you guys have down there with the shanty towns and the apartheid and all those things. That's what I said, like with the glassy eyed stare. I kind of expect people in a situation like that, in a shanty town, for example, to kind of just go, you kind of glass over, because you have to do it to kind of survive.
Well, I think in a weird way in South Africa, the religion helps to paper over a lot of the cracks. Like you'll find an awful lot of people, including many of the people that live in shanty towns, they're much more upbeat and friendly and chipper than you would suggest, or their circumstances which should suggest that they would be. And the thing with the shanty towns is they really kind of sprung up a lot more when the government started paying more larger welfare to mothers, because then there was less consequence for having more kids, and so obviously people were just having more kids. But I'd say in terms of the attitude, it's South Africa is, generally speaking, if you ever go there, it's a very friendly, it's a generally speaking very hospitable country, no matter who you talk to. Everyone will bend over backwards to give you great service. Everyone will bend over backwards to make you feel friendly, or make you feel welcome, make you feel make you feel at home. And that's true whether they're Afrikaans, white people, whether they're whether they're English people, whether they're native African people. It doesn't really matter. Everyone kind of, there's a couple of things that are the same. And the main thing with South Africans, mate, if you want to get on the good side of the average South African, buy them a beer and talk about rugby. It's problem solved.
I can do one of those, but rugby, I don't know shit about rugby.
Dude, rugby is religion in that country. I mean, like if you like black, white, doesn't matter who it is, man, woman. The way to get that country together, if the rugby team wins, then there is no greater. There's no country that's happier than South Africa. If the rugby team loses, they're a bit fucked off.
It's the same here in Norway with the skiing. There's one fucking 19-year-old girl who wins something in skis, and the whole country is fucking off their rockers. Everyone kind of lives on that triumph and don't really realize that most other people on the planet don't watch biathlon.
Don't give a shit.
With a gun,
yeah. But no, I mean, as I said, it's growing up in apartheid was very different. But what I have also mentioned on the podcast is, I mean, I grew up with, so in my class there were 20 girls and there were 11. My first high school class, like grade 8 and grade 9. There were 20 girls, 11 boys. Of the 11 boys, I was the only one that was not part of what they called the Afrikaner Weerstandsbeweging, which is like the neo-Nazi group, like that. And they were like their youth movement, and they would get together every Saturday morning, preparing for the day that the black man took over and went door to door killing people, which obviously didn't happen. These people are fucking lunatics. But because of that, I had an awful lot of got into an awful lot of fist fights and stuff like that, because I wasn't going to be part of it. I thought it was fucking stupid. But equally into my adult years, when the woke start talking about racism, I'm like, I've actually seen and been around and spoken firsthand to people that genuinely will look at another human being and say, I don't care what the content of your character is, because you look different to me, I hate you and I want you to be dead.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between that and what they define as racism, and especially in America and in Europe.
From what I've, I don't know that much about African history, but there is an aggression down there that surprises me. Like, I don't know how long the Zulus and the Houthis, or how long have these people hated each other? There's an ingrown hate as well, because from what I've seen from history books, this hate was already there when the white man popped up, you know.
Yeah. So in South Africa, it's the two main tribes are the Zulus and the Xhosas, but they were at war with each other forever. And that's true of the I think it's the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda.
Tutsis, that's
It's true of Somalia, and I speak under correction on this, but my understanding is the background of that is it effectively it's essentially 16 tribes that have been kind of forced to live together in this man-made country.
I heard about that. Yeah,
and then they their history between themselves has been civil war, and they've always been at odds with each other. And so, unsurprisingly, Somalia is a virtually completely and utterly dysfunctional country with people fighting and warlords cropping up every fucking 5 seconds. It's not that bad in South Africa, obviously, but you still get that.
But it surprises me, that the aggression, the racial kind of hatred that I've seen come out from between those tribes,
black on black hatred.
Yeah, it's really one of those, I'll drag your kid out and I'll chop his fucking arms off in front of you. It's like, this is really, that's a kind of racism that most people up here, they have no clue that it exists at all.
Yeah,
there is racism within things.
Yeah, it's a very tribalist thing, and again, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people that haven't actually been there or don't know anything about the history, they have no awareness of it. But it's like as I said, Zulus and Xhosas. I mean, even at a political level in South Africa, there are loggerheads all the time. In South Africa, you've got the ANC, the African National Congress, who are the ruling party. They're mostly Xhosa. And then in the you've got the Inkatha Freedom Party, which are the Zulus, and they can't stand each other. The Inkatha Freedom Party has historically in the past sided with right-wing, like white nationalist parties before they side with the African National Congress. That's how much they hate them. So it's, as I said, it's a wild world, mate.
And then politics is, it's always at the base of it, like I've said this a million times. We're like, right now we are in the pockets of about 100 fat old guys in suits, and they are running the whole shit show, the whole planet. And we're 8 billion people sitting here just taking it up the ass. Yes, this is a great system. No, it's not. It's not a great system. It never was. And I think the last 100 years fucking underlines how fucking crap this system is. No matter if it's this or that or the other, or it just.
And the thing about
work.
it is, it's a kind of progressive regression that they're taking us on all the time, because I think what's happened over the course of the last couple of years is the internet has meant that we're able to spot the inconsistencies a lot more quickly because there's an audit trail now, there's receipts, and they themselves become really sloppy. Cole Scumbag Schwab and the WEF, they talk openly about what their intentions are, and their intentions are not positive. No. So it's like they're almost it's like they're telling us, hey, by the way, that stuff that you guys were saying were conspiracy theories years ago, it's actually true, but we dare you to try and convince the average person of it. We're just going to talk about it openly, but no one's going to give a fuck because we've somehow conditioned them into believing that anything that goes against the grain, conspiracy theory. So
I hate that fucking term, conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Of course, there is some conspiracy theories out there, but it has become this thing that, the media and everyone is using on everyone who's trying to say, hey, might this be like the ancient aliens guys, there is no harm in Giorgio and his hairdo and the rest of the ancient aliens guys, but they are being called conspiracy theorists. That's not what they're doing. They're just about truths. And if you listen to a show like that, they say, can it have been? Maybe. Is it possible that? They never say that this is the way it fucking is.
This is definitely what happened. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's a degree of uncertainty, and they're trying to find order in the chaos. Clarity.
And they're open about it. I think school books should have been written like this. Not in math and hard science like math. 2 + 2 is 4. We know that, but in a lot of other topics, a school book should have been, this is what we know so far, these are the theories, and this is where it might go, or these are other theories that might lead on to something else, these are other points of view, for example. So you get the whole thing. Let's say, okay, we're going to talk about dinosaurs. Well, this is what we know about dinosaurs, this is what we think about dinosaurs, and this is what 3-4 different groups of scientists mean about dinosaurs. And you can make up your own fucking mind what you think about it. And instead you have like Jesus parks in fucking America with dinosaurs and Jesus holding hand in hand. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
I saw that. That was on Religulous. Jesus land. It's fucking hysterical.
And it's actually grown-up people taking their kids there. You know, 1.5 million people a year go there and explain to their kids that, yes, the dinosaurs was walking when Jesus was. What the fuck is wrong with you, man?
Well, again, so maybe I view things differently because of how I grew up. But, I remember people that would do stuff like that because, again, I grew up with an awful lot of them. People that sit there openly weeping, every Easter Sunday and stuff like that. They would see even like a video of Jesus and go, God, I wish I could go there. And then in the same breath, they would call Muslims crazy. And then you go to yourself, but what evidence do you have that you're right and they're wrong? Like they all let's remove all bias out of this and make it a completely objective study. And what exactly do you have to suggest that you're not the crazy one? And I think a lot of things with people that write stuff off as conspiracy theories, especially the media, if they don't want people to fall for quote unquote misinformation, conspiracy theories, then stop giving us so many things or stop doing so many things that raises suspicions. Inconsistency, lie. You keep getting caught out in lies. Same with the government. So say, they talk about the election being stolen in America. Okay, that's fair enough. If you say that didn't happen, that's absolutely fine. But then explain why it takes you several days to count your votes. Why do you do things that arouse so much suspicion in people? And the only conclusion I can reach is that they do it on purpose because it's a distraction. It's a distraction whilst they're busy with all sorts of other shit. So while we're squabbling over why it took, 6 days to count votes in Arizona or wherever the fuck, they busy, scamming away at all sorts of other stuff.
And it's like this. There's kind of false flag kind of operations going on all around, and they need this little chaos thing. It's wonderful for politicians and those devils behind the politicians who's actually running shit. This chaos, they're feeding off it. It's beautiful. It keeps us preoccupied with all kinds of fucking stupid things, and they can do their whole shadow work.
Sometimes they come unstuck because they have so much, they're spinning so many plates at any given time. They come unstuck with the things that they're doing. So a good example being yesterday, the news about the two supposed Russian missiles landing in the Polish border town and killing 2 people. So the newspapers over here immediately blared out, escalation, Russia, on the offense.
Well.
Zelensky is like, he's on TV immediately saying, this is
a
step up of aggression. We have to respond. And then it turns out a couple of hours later, oh no, by the way, those were fired by those were fired by Ukrainians. And on top of that, NATO has been tracking the missiles they knew didn't come from Russia. But you go to yourself, it's like if they didn't say that, I would imagine the average imbecile in the street would very easily be led into believing, Putin stepped up the aggression now. We need to get into this. We need to get involved. We need to teach him a lesson. It's like, don't you fucking morons realize that war in our day and age is not, it's almost it feels to me like. We're talking about the First World War earlier. I was saying to my girlfriend the other day, when people compare this, they all cry about this is just like Weimar Germany or this is Germany 1937. It's not. I feel like we're closer to the First World War in our attitude than we are to the Second World War. The First World War I interpret as a lot of people getting involved or walking blindly into a war that they did not realize what the consequences of that war was going to be. And then obviously the ultimate consequence of the First World War is the Second World War, because, the guns may have stopped shooting on the 11th hour of the 11th day, but I mean, the fucking story is not over. So it's like, but I kind of feel like we're in the same boat. I feel like there's an awful lot of politicians, and even the population that seems to not have any comprehension of what it would mean if we were to go to war with the degree of firepower that our militaries now possess.
And exactly there is the similarity with the First World War as well, because in 1914 people were still stuck in the Zulu wars, in people with muskets and shit. They were stuck in the old way of doing a war. They didn't realize that those 20 or last 20 years before the First War started, they armed the fuck up. No one had any idea what those tanks were going to do. Those massive fucking bombs that lifts half a fucking French town out of the mud, and the trench fevers, all the madness, the bunker madness. No one had any fucking idea. And we are there again because we have no idea what modern warfare will be like if we really turn it on. If all these fucking things that we've been fine adjusting now for the last 70 years, if all that is put on, fucking shit. No one has any idea what this is going to be like, and it's going to be a fucking horror.
Well, I mean, even if you look at the step up, and this was only a matter of 25 years, you look at the step up from the devastation from the Second World War in terms of what the military was able to do, or a military force was able to do in Vietnam. I mean, look at the fucking Tet Offensive in Vietnam. If you want to see, genuine devastation. Now imagine that 50 years on, and in our day and age. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And I think it's because the average person hasn't ever bothered to look at any documentaries or any videos about military technology. They don't know what the military is actually capable of. I mean, they will do stuff in a fucking hour that makes the Tet Offensive look like a visit to a Sunday school picnic.
And we as citizens, there is no point to us. They will not stop just because there's a little town or there's a family there. Or when those big fucking war wheels get rolling, we are all completely fucking pointless. And the coldness, the evil, I was watching this old man here the other day on television. He has been in one of those cities down in Kharkiv in Ukraine that has been freed. And he had been taken down into a basement by 3 young Russian soldiers, like 19, 20 years old. He had been held there for several days, and they took 15 centimeter old rusted spikes. And every hour or so, then drove one all the way in, starting with his shoulder blade, and then just going 5 centimeters between each of them, nailing them, letting him sit there for an hour, nailing one more. Doing this for 3 fucking days. So that evil from the Second World War, it's not gone at all. It's just been in hiding. It's a human thing to do such evil things.
100%. So this, I was actually thinking about this about a week ago because Mike Hill and my friend Evan Hopper, they've just launched a new show on Mike Hill's Everything Went Black podcast called The Hollywood Babylon. They were talking about Apocalypse Now. And I was busy thinking back to Apocalypse Now, and I was like, that movie, if anything, is a warning about what happens when you remove the net of civility from a group of people and you give them weaponry that is capable of industrial scale destruction. And what you just said now, it's a great example. That's what happens in war. What do people think is going to happen to a 17, 18 and a 19-year-old who is seeing his friends getting murdered, and who in his own hands has the ability to snuff out life very, very easily, and also has an army supporting him in doing so. And then again, as I said, you pull the net of civility away there, the rules and things like that governing the way that we operate, in our day to day, that goes. Of course, things are going to go off the rails. Look what happens in a place like America when people start rioting. Or in any country when they start rioting, you give it like the riot starts, the next day it's like this fever strikes and fucking these buildings burning, people are smashing at things, they're behaving like complete and utter animals. And imagine if those people had automatic weaponry and assault rifles and fucking tanks behind them. That's exactly what war is.
You can just go as far or as short away as that fucking idiotic, toilet paper crisis we had a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, there was people in the States fucking going to the shop, to the grocery shop with an AK in their hands because
Yeah,
I need fucking toilet rolls. And, that's all it took. It's nothing. There was
yeah,
some rumors about toilet paper, and even here in Norway, we cleaned out the fucking shelves.
yeah.
And that's nothing compared to what's coming down the road if they say, well, there is no more fuel, there is no more proper food, you have to, it's going to go so fucking haywire so
Well,
fast.
when it becomes a fight over resources, water, food, fuel, it like then all bets are off. But again, I to what we said earlier, I feel like the human race, forget Weimar, forget all that shit. The human race is much more like the people of the First World War, in which, prior to the First World War, there were a lot of people that thought there would never be a Great War again. I mean, there was, as a matter of fact, I believe in 1913 there was a book written on the topic where a guy argued there will never be another Great War, and then 1914 kicks in, and shit goes seriously fucking haywire.
It must have been written by that guy who created the British Railways. When he was finished, he was standing up I think it was in Scotland. He said, "There is no more to be invented."
Yeah, something to that effect.
Fucking...
But I'm trying to think what that book is called now, because I know they actually talk about it at the start of Apocalypse World War One, because they talk about the book, and then they show this shot of like all these guys that were, that had like fucking, what do they call it? In Afrikaans it's called bombskok. It's like they're shell shocked. They're like standing there and they're like shaking their heads, and guys with their half their face blown off and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's some of the fucking scariest shit ever.
I always wanted to make a music video out of those clips, but I've started a couple of times, but it's uncomfortable when
it's fucking terrifying.
Spend a couple of hours watching these guys, and you're like, oh fuck, I feel sick. I can't watch this anymore, because it's grown ass men, and they're so fucking shocked and shell shocked, and there's nothing left but total fear and terror inside of these people. And wow, and this we're gonna see this coming out from Ukraine too. We're not seeing anything because it's ongoing, but there's shell shocked kids. Like, I'm going to tell another story that I heard that triggered. There's a song on the new Nocturnal Breed album called Erase the Flag and the Hordes Will Follow. And that was really, it started when Taliban was taking back Afghanistan, and I was irritated about that, of course. And then half a year later, the war started in Ukraine, and I was one of those first days when they really attacked Ukraine with those massive fucking missiles just blowing up apartment blocks and stuff. And there's this reporter from, I think it was British Sky News, who was talking about, he had been out on the street, and there was this little boy who was 9 years old. He was sitting on the street like this, and he had a big splinter stuck in his head, and he was sitting watching a burning car. And inside the car, his mother is burning to death.
Jesus Christ.
And it's like that imagery. It's like, fuck, I'm a father. I have a step grandson and granddaughter and stuff. That's one of those times TV made me cry, because it's like, it's so fucking horrible. Imagine that kid. He survived. He's down there, or maybe he's been sent to Poland or somewhere, but he lost everything, and he had to watch his mom just, spasm and burn to death in that car while he had been blown out of the car and was stuck with his shrapnel in his skull. It's like, fucking hell. It's pretty raw. So that's why.
No, I totally agree with you. But again, I think an awful lot of people, need to think very carefully about the politicians that they support and things like that, because they're supporting people who seem to think that I agree with you. Think that the human life is completely expendable.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of the folks that people think are the good guys are the ones that are the head cheerleaders for this. I mean, I know people in the Ukraine, and I've been very strongly in support of hoping that war comes to an end, and that the people that I know there are unharmed, and there's as little loss of human life there as possible. But I certainly think Zelensky is a fucking crook as well. There's no doubt about it in my mind.
People are, and this is, I don't know, probably, I don't know, maybe we're both going to be kicked out of every social media now, but people have to remember that before this war, if you wanted to go anywhere and buy a container of heroin, a busload of whores and women and children, you went to Ukraine.
Yeah.
It was
they
criminal
ranked. I mean,
shitheads in Europe.
And this is no conspiracy theory. There was a deluge of articles written in the newspaper, and there's a lot of people that have kind of got memes and stuff of this now, like a deluge of newspaper articles written about the corruption in the Ukraine. And like from my perspective, I'm like, was this a come to Jesus moment? Did he, was this Paul walking on the walking the road to Damascus, and God shone down from the sky? Putin shot a missile, and he was like, oh, I'm changed. I'm not going to be corrupt anymore. So my thoughts and my hope is is with the people of the Ukraine, that they come out of this as soon as possible with as little loss of human life as one can reasonably hope for in a situation like that. But I've no doubt that this story that we're being sold about Zelensky being a hero is nonsense. I don't believe it.
No,
if you follow,
the whole thing is fishy. There's
100%. This guy is supposedly in the middle of war-torn Ukraine, and he's filming TV shows with David Letterman, accepting Oscars from Sean Penn. I'm sorry, but I just don't. I don't buy it.
He's grabbing his moment now. He's on a roll there, and he knows that he's going to go down in history books massively.
Yeah,
and he's just like, let's make this wine really good, and
let's make this last. Like I said, I don't buy it, and I don't buy it because if anyone wants to question my intentions here, I don't buy it because of the fact that I have a degree of empathy and a degree of love for people, and exactly to the scenario that you just described. I don't want to see people go through that. So I don't want anybody who is in any way responsible for fomenting that sort of situation to be in a position where they can carry on doing so. I want those people removed from political office. I want those people removed frankly from the human race, because they don't contribute to the human race in a meaningful and positive way.
And it's obvious when you look around the world, there is so many nations and places that it's, you look at some of those nations and it's like, why do you keep getting the same fuckheads into the same positions over and over again? You try to have a half-ass revolution and you back off again, and it's back and forth, and you let the same assholes do the same fucking things. It's really weird. I know it's really hard for people to change, and it's sometimes millennia and centuries of traditions and countries and stuff, but I try to watch the world like an alien would and just look down on it, and it's perplexing to see this history of humans as far as we know, going back 10,000 years or so. And first of all, it's so much wrong fucking information. I'm tired of people saying, oh, the invention of the wheel. You don't fucking know when some dude put a round thing and rolled something over it and went off. We have no fucking idea. And they say the invention of the civilized towns. And fuck no, there's something going on. Then they go to Baalbek in Turkey, which is like 12,500 years old. And that's fucking with every fucking historian. And the big old historians and universities, they will not take it in that there might have been something here 10,000, 15, 20,000 years ago, before the deluge and the big freeze and everything. It's so fucking arrogant. Here's the reality of it is the human race can barely tell a story accurately that's 20 years old. How are they going to tell a story accurately that's 2,000 years old or 20,000 years old? Exactly.
There's going to be some creative liberties taken there.
And of course, the victors, they write and so on and so forth, and it's all been twisted up. And then you have the massive religions like Catholicism coming in there 1,500 years ago or 1,700 years ago, and just since then been fucking us all in the eye every day for 1,700 years, and no one is fucking really reacting. Go to war against the Vatican, just level that fucking place, open that fucking archive and let's figure out some shit from the last 2,000 years, because they've got all the little clues and they're dealing with all this. It's fucking it's so obviously.
Well, I loved how they were
heels,
telling us all to get vaccinated, as though it's like a command from the Lord himself. I mean, that again to me is like where I look at the human race and I just see a degradation in people operating on principle. For years and years and years, you know, anyone with a brain who observes the news would be naturally distrustful of pharmaceutical companies, and all of a sudden they're beyond reproach. Everything they say is true. Trust the experts. It's like, you know, and again now when, you know, at the peak of all of this craziness, you were the worst person on earth for saying this. Now it's starting to come out by their own admission. Well, we might have gotten a few things wrong, but oops. Yeah. People that got myocarditis, not our problem really. We're politically, you know, we're politically and fiscally covered from any repercussion, so it's fine.
But they know this, you know. Then I say them, you know, whoever it is who's running this shit show, you know, they know this about the human condition. We do this. We forget shit really fucking fast. And we're very easily stared, and like 95% of people are just happy as long as they can follow something, be it a state leader or religion or your boss at work or whatever. So most people just want to be let off into the fucking sunset, and I think it's so fucking weird.
Well, that's been my theory.
My own family is like this too. My mom and stuff has got one of those who's like, no, I think it'll only be pretty well. It's like, not necessarily this time.
But that's been my theory about Wokism as well. Wokism emerged inside of a vacuum of religion's place in the world diminishing. And all of us looked at it, you know, who were of a similar mindset. You and I most likely thought the same thing. Great, this is fucking awesome that you know, less people are going to church. But then you look at it and you go, but what's replaced it? Has what's replaced it been better or worse? I would argue it's worse. And Mortis spoke about this as well in an interview a little while ago. You know, he was saying exactly the same thing. It's like religion goes away. We were all happy about it happening, but the end result isn't necessarily a good thing, because at the end of the day, it strikes me now from my observation of the average human being doesn't want to think for themselves. They would like to believe that there's something guiding them that is going to get them over the humps and over the difficulties in life. They don't want to directly confront any of that stuff. They don't really want to think about that anything bad could happen. So it's like to your point, you know, in a global pandemic where things could potentially turn really serious and could go to like smallpox levels or, you know, Spanish flu and stuff like that, they just want to believe like whatever somebody is throwing out that looks like a fucking lifeboat, they're going to grab onto it. And if you say to them, hey, that lifeboat looks like it's you know, covered in snakes, no, you're wrong. You know, just let me believe in my lifeboat.
Yeah, and I think like the whole pandemic thing, combined with that Black Lives Matters thing, it was like a massive trigger. It just, you can hear the cogwheels changing, and it's like, and as you say, all these woke people are now much more annoying than the religious people.
The thing is that they are the, if you look at it in the context of like the Great Leap Forward or the Russian Revolution. I mean, firstly, what is this? You know, what is the Great Reset if not fascism by a different name? They talk about stakeholder capitalism. What they're essentially talking about is a convergence of the government and of corporates, right? And what is that if not by Mussolini's definition? What is that if not fascism? So it will then follow similar tenets to something like fascism or something like communism, whereby you have the useful idiots. The useful idiots are the ones that, you know, during the Great Leap Forward, they were the ones leading the struggle sessions, beating the olds with a stick to say, you know, I'm sorry for you know, the fact that my grandfather owned land. But they're also the ones that are put to death. What the government's realized is we can use you know, things that at the core of it is something that we should all take seriously, right? Racism, the climate, the environment. What we're going to do is we're going to co-opt those things, and we're going to use that as a cudgel to beat the population into submission. Because what's worst, what is a worse sentence in 2022 than being called a racist socially?
Yeah.
Even if you look at the wording of certain things, like people were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, being called a Holocaust denier was literally like being called a fucking Jeffrey Dahmer's right-hand man. But then what they do is they start co-opting the language. Climate denier, then it becomes election denier, and then it's it's like one thing I think that. But you see what it is. It's like this. People don't realize the subtlety in what they're doing. But what they're doing is they're taking things that on its face everybody goes, I'm not a racist. I don't, I've never once looked at a human being and gone, I hate that person because of the color of their skin. I don't believe we should fuck the planet up. I believe we should take care of the planet. But then they what they don't see is everything that the government puts behind that.
Yeah.
They'll say, and they even mix the two together, right? They'll say, like, if you don't eat less meat, you're not going to save the world, and the climate crisis is a racist problem. It's like, where the fuck have you come up with these insane things? But no one ever stops to dig through it, because they only look at the top line message. The top line message is, Greta standing there crying in front of the UN saying, "How dare you?" That's what it is. So it touches the emotional buttons, and this is the I'm rambling a little bit now, but this is the.
No, it's true. This is making shit even worse. Every time
this is the danger
I get irritated and pissed off.
100%. But this is the danger of what they do with these things, right? All of these things are very emotive topics. So it's very easy for people that are practiced at manipulating people's emotions to just hit those buttons, And so, like, you see a little 17-year-old girl, I don't go to school anymore because I'm going to die, and how dare you? And I saw this firsthand. The average person looks at it, they go, "Oh, it's so inspiring." I really need to think about how much I fly.
It's fucking horrible.
It's like, but this is a school truant. This is someone who isn't paying attention in fucking class, slipping school. In my day, if you slipped school, you got a hiding. And she's trying to tell us about the climate.
And those, conglomerate devils, who's running all the stuff that is actually fucking up the planet. When they see her, they don't react at all. Probably you just leave your Bentley running for an hour.
Of course.
Just for the fuck of it, because that fucking little girl and those fucking people who turned her into fucking vegetable heads just because she sat down outside her school. It's not creating anything but just more. I can't even come up with a word. It's just human mongoloidism just exploding in all directions.
Those people are the useful idiots, because they don't they don't know. I'll bet you could quiz most of them. They will not know that, I think the statistic is, in order to create as much power as 1 square kilometer or one square meter of like a nuclear power plant or whatever the case may be, or fossil fuel energy source, you have to displace 16 times the landmass for solar and wind. So, so then that's how you get to results like 14 million trees apparently cut down in Scotland to make place for fucking wind turbines. That's not helpful to the environment. No one with any intelligence could look at that and go, well, we're saving the earth. We've chopped down 14 million trees, to make place for these fucking monstrosities, which, by the way, we actually don't even have the technology to store more than 1 minute and 43 seconds worth of electricity in the batteries. So we can't create base load. So when the wind stops blowing, power goes out.
And the worst thing is that there is hundreds and hundreds of other ways to create energy,
Yeah.
But it's just been from when Tesla was doing his stuff, and it's just been squeezed to the side,
Yeah.
General Electric and all those big oil companies and everyone, they want the money. It's not about the smartest way of getting energy here,
Well, the main takeaway as well, if people have survived this far into the conversation, the main takeaway is they are going to tell you to do an awful lot of things, and they're not going to do it themselves. And this COP27 fucking bullshit carnival in Egypt is a great example.
Yes.
They tell us we have to stop eating meat, we have to stop flying. 400 private planes transported the delegates there, and whilst there they feasted upon chicken, beef, lamb, all the they lived off the fat of the land.
Kind of, they were eating out there, everyone sitting like little harem tent, and
they lived off the fat of the land, but we're told you need to watch your carbon imprint. They're starting to, banks are starting to work out these carbon calculators, which we all know will transform into social credit scores, which we all know they'll say to you one day, well, Jackie, it's we've taken a look at how much meat you've been eating this year, and unfortunately, you don't qualify to be able to fly on holiday this year. So we're okay because we can, we have private jets, so we can do what we want, but you're not allowed. But as I said, anyone who mistakes this for anything other than it is politically, historically, and otherwise ignorant. Converging government and corporate, and corporate entities is fascism. That's by the most strict definition of it. Yep. So you want to talk about being an anti-fascist? Start railing against Joe Biden. That's how you prove you're an anti-fascist.
Yeah.
But
that's the new neo-fascism, it's not the left turn fascist kind of thing, and everyone is just praising it and thinking it's so, I don't know, it's
great. It's going to be they keep telling you it's going to be more equitable. Okay, so what's equitable about your ability to fly with your private jet at however much you want, eat whatever you want, but I have to give up my car, I have to live in what they call a 15-minute city. You have to be able to get to your, so this is something that they're trialing in Oxford. You have to be able to, you can get to wherever you want to be in 15 minutes. If you leave your zone more than 100 times a year with your car, you get fined £70 every single time you leave the zone. It's fucking insane.
Orwell is cartwheeling in his coffin,
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly what he was talking about.
Yeah, it is. And you and me, and we all grew up on this, that this was science fiction, this was movies, this was fun to think about and play around with, and we're so damn close, and we're walking that kind of set line, that's been blatantly obvious, I think, but we kind of just, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with us. We're just constantly just going the wrong way historically every fucking time, in every twist and turn, we walk the wrong way, and it's that human, I don't know what it is. We don't want to, as you said, we don't want to face things. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to think about our own mortality or all these things.
It's the same. It's the same element of the human condition that made people not want to question that there are a couple of big inconsistencies in the Bible. They also, for that very reason, don't want to question the inconsistencies they see in the world around them, because it's too difficult for them to confront those things. Confronting those things greatly impacts on their worldview and greatly impacts on the dome of calm that they've built around them. And the dome of calm is incredibly fragile. Anything can shatter it.
That's what everyone is protecting,
we saw when Trump was elected, people are screaming and carrying on like it's the fucking coming of the Antichrist. But they have that dome built around them, and they do not want anything to interfere with that dome. So anything that comes in that breaks the paradigm just a little bit, or that causes them to be confronted very directly with the inconsistency around them, they can't handle that.
Yeah. Norway is like that, so.
So let's get back to music after that 45-minute journey. So Nocturnal Breed, new album out in, you said early 2023.
There's a big queuing for the printing of vinyls and a lot of stuff, which was actually started by some of those pop artists.
Wasn't it Taylor Swift or something?
Taylor Swift and Adele, they have each their album, and they kind of just swiped the whole market for vinyl pressing plants and everything. Yeah. So we are delivering the master around now next week, and from that time it will be 6 months until the pressing is finished. And this time we really want to have everything finished, so the LP and CD and cassette and merchandise and everything is there
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, a couple of times before we haven't had that, and you have the LP coming out a half year later, and the whole momentum kind of goes out of it. So we just, I think, around the late April, early May. So
And
by
and
then,
who's putting it out for you?
Dark Essence, thank
Okay.
God. We've been this, it's a cliche. Oh, I'm in a band and that fucking label, it's been a lot like that. And we've been on several, can I call it mediocre labels?
Yeah.
Without offending anyone, or they probably, there's been a lot of back and forth, there's some language problems, and a lot of yes sayers. And when you get to the point and actually want to execute a release, which is the same thing as you're creating a brand, you have to think a little business wise, like, and that never happened, never ever happened. It just completely hit the wall, because black thrash, which people have baptized this genre we're playing in with Nocturnal Breed, it's never been cool with the big labels or with the big guys or anyone. It's always been just falling around, in the pits. So this time, 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago, I very rudely told our former label, Faulty Records, to fuck off. In the worst way you can tell a German person. I'm not proud of this, but after a lot of fucking back and forth and a lot of fucking misunderstandings, and one of the guys managed to kind of, do the good old, well, you're a fucking rock star. And then it just fucking all light bulbs went up, because if you want to be a rock star, you're not going to be a Nocturnal Breed, because
I was about to say, you're not making black and thrash.
And that just stopped the entire contract, or the whole deal was just off, and just said, well, we can't deal with you saying this. And I was like, well, I know that. And that stopped everything. So we didn't have to go through any negotiations or anything. They wanted us as far the fuck away from them as possible. And that was a good start to kind of jump into a new label and stuff. And we got Dark Essence, which has Tåke or Take, like all you people out there say.
Yeah. Well, I must confess, including me.
2 A's is an O, so it's Tåke. Okay.
All right.
And
it also has Code. Code is a fucking brilliant band, in my opinion.
And they're based in Bergen, so they live 6 hours over the mountain from where I live.
Yeah,
we can talk to them. In being Norwegians, we are weird, so we can talk to them in our weird way and explain. And it's been kind of blessing to talk to grown-up people who's running a proper business with a business mind behind it. And I've never been as happy with a label as I am now. Does this sound very cliche-ish, because every band says that on their new label, but to be home with a Norwegian gang and a Norwegian label, and it's been run by people who play in big bands. So it's easier to talk to people than about the ups and downs and how you want to do things, and they just gave us free reins to do whatever we wanted. I have told them that I am massively tired of this scene, and I'm tired of touring and playing live. And I'm not actually playing live, because I love being on that stage and doing that show, but it consistently has been getting worse and worse being in the live circuit. And I'm tired of it. And they were pretty cool with it. They were like, this is about the music. So we just said, okay, we're just going to make an album that is only about the music. We're not going to think about, can we do this live, or can we, we're just going to make an album. And the Dark Essence is, for us, it's a blessing. It's like coming home to some grown-up people.
And so no touring and stuff like that planned for when the record comes out.
No, not at all. And I know that's the worst kind of PR stunt in the world, but for me personally, I have to, I call it pulling the Dark Throne card. It's like, I'm fucking out of this.
Yeah.
And it is not because of the fans or stuff, but I'm getting too old, and that sounds stupid when you have Kiss going around playing. But we never, as I said, Nocturnal Breed fall between the cracks in the chairs and everything. So there's never really a good organization around it, and I have to basically do most of it myself, and it's worn me out. Just 25 years of arguing with people, and it came to a head last summer when I started to go after the guys in the band as well. I got super aggressive because of all this shit with the label. And so every time I was in a Nocturnal Breed kind of setting, I was super aggressive with the guys. And the guys are happy guys, you know, they want to drink and they do some drugs here and there. And it's, you know, I couldn't deal with it anymore. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And one of the guys, he drank 12 pints during 1 hour. And then we're going to start to sit down and kind of plan out an album. And it's like, I can't do this. So at one point last summer, Nocturnal Breed was only me for about a month.
So how did you kind of bring them back together around the table and get to a better spot?
Two of them I couldn't, the two young guys in the band. And it's probably because there's an age difference. We really crashed what I mean about delivering on stage and what I am inspired by, and my drummer Thomas, what he's inspired by, and it just kind of crashed. So I couldn't bring our two guitarists back, but I got them to record their parts for the new album. And we just didn't talk to each other for about 4 or 5 months, and I just sent them a message saying, hey, where's this really going? And they got a bunch of other bands and, you know, doing all kinds of things. So they're kind of off doing their thing. So for about a year, it was only me and Thomas, or Tex Terror. Who's been doing the drums for the last 25 years. So me and him more or less did the whole album. And then we got our old guitarist, Mastor, who's been with us since 97 and on and off a couple of times in the 2000s. And he came back, but he's like me. He's like very finished with the live scene, and he needs to take care of his life. And he's doing martial arts and, you know, yeah, just, I don't know. I think we're all a bit damaged from doing this, since it's never been like a high class standard band. You have to do so much struggling, and being the weak fucking piss people we are, you turn to drugs and drinking. And I've been having a full family on the side and getting married and divorced. And it's been like, I don't know, I need a couple of years to find myself and find the joy. And instead I just pack everything into the music and try to deliver, you know, full on. So if I died tomorrow, I'd be pretty happy with this new Nocturnal Breed album. We kind of said what we can say within the framework of, you know, it's like the last Motorhead albums. If you remove them from the catalog, you wouldn't probably fucking notice. Because everything had already been said, you know.
Yeah.
So well, brother, that's almost how I feel with Nocturnal Breed. It's like, okay, we made this last fucking effort, and it was pretty hard. And I mixed it myself, and I did everything myself. We had it in 2 different studios, and they couldn't do the mix because it's super organically recorded like it was in 1986 or something. So I ended up doing the whole mix myself. So I've been sitting, you know, 15 hours every day for 1 month just, and it's horrible to mix your own fucking shit. Big advice to anyone who's planning to sit down and mix a 30-track recording. Don't do it. Fucking hell. Every fucking corner you run into, should I do it like this or should I do it like that? A little up or a little down, or, and yeah, I'm glad I had a little smoke during that, because fuck, I was losing my mind completely.
Yeah. Well, dude, man, what a fucking epic conversation. We've been going now for nearly 3 hours. So it's way beyond what I suggested. So we're going to, I think we should probably kind of do this as one self-contained episode. And then what we'll do is have another one maybe early next year, and we'll do the news, because I do want to do the news with you at some point.
Yeah, we can do that. And then I have the promo and stuff, and I can send you, you know, the album. I can send you the whole thing, you know.
Awesome. Well, dude, like I said, what a fucking blast. And we will, like I said, man, we'll definitely do it again at some point very, very soon.
Yeah.
You know, it's thanks for indulging me as well in the history lesson earlier on. You know, it's like I said, you know, when you one of the things about growing up in South Africa, to kind of bring it full circle to what we were talking about earlier, is you were, because of that kind of isolation that the country experienced and because of the religious stuff, you were so far removed from music that for me, for us to discover music was a chore. And also you held the people that you listened to in such high regard because they were so far away from you. They seemed like just complete and utter gods. Like I remember when I first shook Phil Anselmo's hand, it took like a while to register with me what had just happened. Same thing as when I met Tom Araya, and the same thing when I've met an awful lot of people. Because these are people that you grew up with their posters up on your wall and things like that. And it's like, they used to think these are, fucking larger than life, almost as you said earlier, they are gods in your mind. So, and obviously the black metal thing has just always been something I've been so fascinated by, because those bands had such a massive impact on my life. And very, very weirdly, given what you said about, going down a self-destructive path, I actually think that music steered me in a towards a very productive path in my life, because for all of the things that I was going through, it really did feel like it felt like a weapon in a weird way. Like
it does for me too, and it still does.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I got into. I don't care what anyone says about, it's dark, and we've all been walking some dark paths at times, but I'm so glad that scene made me think. It made me look at myself and put some standards in my life, both when it comes to creativity and music. It put the bar really high up. But also as a person, that to sit down and read stuff and study stuff and make sure that you know what you're talking about, like honing that weapon, making sure that, I'm fucking on point when I'm doing this. And like you said in the start there, we were almost too young to make that kind of music, but that kind of came with it, that urge to, just be a bit sharper, be a bit more, I don't know, not intelligent, because that's going to sound stupid, but, to use myself. I think if I ended up in the hip hop scene or something like that, I would not have expanded my minds to the places I do now. And have done through my life, and started that early. No fucking way. I don't see anyone in the hip hop scene fucking using their brain for anything but piss.
Yeah. No, I do agree. It's a music genre or style that definitely encourages a lot of intellectual curiosity. And I think it's because of the richness of the lyrics and the kind of the way that it's presented. It makes you curious about a lot of other things, like what are these guys singing about? You go and start going into history, and when you go down, the historical rabbit hole, that opens up various other rabbit holes. So I absolutely agree with you. But again, it's like you listen to that In the Nightside Eclipse, and you go, these guys were 16 and 17 years old when they wrote this shit. It fucking blows my mind. But I'll wrap it up with one amusing story, because I'm sure you know him, but Samoth, back when he was doing Scum, I went to go see them at the Underworld. It's like they only did 2 shows, and one of them was at the Underworld. And this is like 2007 or 2008, might even be a little bit before that. But anyway, I'm standing next to this hot woman, smoking hot woman. She's busy talking to me, and I'm like, Jesus, you're being really friendly. And I respond in kind, and what's his name? We go back and forth, and eventually she must have clocked onto the fact that I'm maybe misinterpreting this slightly. So she goes, "Yeah, no, that's my husband on stage." And she points to say Martha, and I was like, "Oh, fuck's sake!" At the same time, I think it came up with, she was saying, "Are you a fan of the band?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I am a fan of this band, but actually, the guitarist on stage, I'm a fucking enormous fan of. He's one of my favorite guitarists ever. Just incredible musician. And then he's my husband. Always thought that was pretty funny. I've never met, but if I did meet him,
very calm, very controlled, calm.
The first thing I'd say is, when the fuck are we getting another Wretched End record? Because I love those 3 albums. So
no, I wish several of those guys in that camp, I just wish they took a step back and just create some magic again. Come on, just.
Well,
I know they have it in there. I want an Emperor album that just knocks everyone out for a couple of years. You know.
I think the issue with that band is they have to have one. It has to be Samoth and Ishon that do the record together, because I feel like if you leave Samoth by himself,
no, it's not the same. It's those two guys.
Goes off the rails.
That's a proper feel. You know.
Yeah, it's like Samoth kind of keeps things heavy and keeps things on the right path.
Since I've been on tour with them too, you know, we opened for Emperor when they did their first European tour, and with Nocturnal Breed, and you know, from observing them for weeks inside a tour bus, I think the clockwork the thing that makes the clockwork work is Samot is the serious one. He's the one who just kind of breaks through and goes, okay, enough fucking laughter and bullshit and jokes. Let's do this. Yeah. Because depending on what, I don't know if people have, you know, can see that in Ishon, but he's a really happy-go-lucky guy. He's really like, if you have a daughter and she came home with him, you would be like, this is good. This is good.
I have a daughter.
He's like this, and he's the son of a police officer, you know, the sheriff in their little tiny town in Norway, and he's very like well up-brought and very polite, and he's giggling a lot and making a lot of fun and stuff. And then you have Samot that kind of comes in and goes like, "Oh, let's be serious for a fucking second." Yeah. And then
I was about to say, he needs to get some of that Attila edge to him. I mean, so like to me, that dude like on stage is something fucking else. I mean, again, I can pontificate about how much I love Mayhem till I'm blue in the face, but I think Telok and I think Mayhem now, to this day, they're fucking brilliant. Like they are the elite of the elite as far as black metal is concerned. And
they're one of those, like, together with Marduk and stuff, you know, together with Marduk, they kind of keep that banner high, and you know, they do their thing and they deliver. And like Attila, you know, he's one of the older guys in the scene, and he's probably 6,000-7,000 years old now, you know, and he's still kind of like possessing himself, if you know what I mean. He kind of gets into that place, you know, where you lose it and he becomes Attila and he delivers, you know. And that's one of the hard things when I'm doing Nocturnal Breed too, because I go into this capsule. It's like being in this weird bubble up on stage, and I have to separate this personality from my own, because I will destroy myself. Hence the name Destroyer. You know, you become your fucking name, and so on and so forth. So, you know, you can't keep that. So Attila is like that too. He's very pleasant and calm, and he's so controlled, you know, when you talk to him, and then he's up on stage and just fucking losing the marbles completely. And then it's really, you know,
well,
it takes a toll on you to do that back and forth thing.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. It's like Telok. Telok is the same. You see him, you see him on his YouTube channel. He's just, you know, super cool, calm dude. But then you listen to a Nadiga record, or you listen to any of the stuff that he contributes to Mayhem, and it's like music just seems to kind of come out of your fingers. I mean, that last Nadiga record was fucking genius, absolute genius. Like, I think so many people sleep on that. What is it called? I think it's called The High Heat That Licks Against the Heavens or something.
I think it's really hard to keep up with all the albums and what's coming out. And since I'm making music myself too, it's sometimes I stay away from some albums and some bands, because I don't want to be colored or influenced by the wrong things. And it's hard. That's why I watched, you know, your show as well, because you keep me a bit updated. What happened the last week here, you know? And
yeah, that's actually that's one of my favorite things to do. Actually, is the news rant. I fucking love it. I'm glad people responded to it. I'm glad people responded to it, because I was like, when I started doing it, I was a bit nervous, because like the first couple I did were only about, you know, 10 minutes. And then I figured out how to share sound and do it. And then I started thinking, okay, well, I see these React videos are popular, so let me do it, but for our music. And we'll, you know, go through Metal Storm and I'll listen to what I want to listen to and say what I think about that. But people like it. So I'm fucking chuffed with that.
I think it's very, and the thing you do that is very good, that is that you don't really hold back, you know. If you hate something, you tell this fucking sucks, and it sucks because of this and that. And so you even told, you even said that the black metal scene from your own home country sucks ass.
Shit. Yeah, it's awful.
I've been trying to look into that, and I have to agree with you.
Dude, it's fucking atrocious. I mean,
I
as I
saw
said,
this festival down there, and it was several bands. I was just clicking around and looking at it. It was like, I can appreciate that people want to do their thing and whatever, but they don't get it, do they?
I want to be a pro skateboarder, mate, but I've never been. I've never been any good at skateboarding. I would love to fight in the UFC. I will never be anything beyond a club level Muay Thai fighter. Sometimes the one of the truest lessons I've ever learned. Sometimes you love the sport, but the sport doesn't love you back.
Yep.
And it's just unfortunately the truth about some scenes. For whatever reason, there's an awful lot of great things about South Africa. I love the country, and I think the people are, for the most part, are nice. But it's just there's very few metal bands that have ever been able to get it together in that country. The vast majority of bands in the metal scene are fucking terrible.
And it might be, the place you live. There's other countries around the world too that really doesn't, put up the heftiest black metal scene.
No.
And it's I've never been to South Africa, but I can imagine that the whole environment and feeling is so different.
Dude, life is too easy. It's like, there's an abundance of food. The weather is great. What do you have to be miserable about when in good weather?
But it's like, how many really good black metal bands come from California,
Yeah, that's true.
I have no idea.
There are some good black metal bands from the States, but California, maybe not so much.
That surfer kind of feel, There's like, I have half my family lives in Spain, on the Sun Coast in Spain. And when I go down to visit my dad, that's not the time I sit down and write black metal music, when I'm sitting in Spain in 45 degrees and, having a beer. No.
Yeah. You're not sitting on the beach, chilling out going, man, I just got an idea for this fucking brutal black metal song.
It doesn't happen at all. I might get some Nocturnal Breed inspiration, because Nocturnal Breed is all over the place. But for black metal, for that kind of feeling, no, I can't be in a sunny, nice, happy place. Which
is why I find it so weird that Australians seem to be able to fucking nail heavy music to the degree that they do. Because Australia, it culturally has a lot of similarities to South Africa, but when it comes to music, good God, the Australian scene have got it dialed in. I mean, there are so many good bands from there. Like, I understand with Poland, you have like a pretty miserable history and background and stuff. I get there's a lot for those people to be pissed off about. So of course there's going to be a lot of great bands to come from there. It
feels like shit.
Yeah, exactly. So, but Australia, it's like, land of abundance. It's a beautiful country. The people generally are super chilled out, and yet somehow so many of them can pick up a guitar. Magic happens.
Aussies always seem so polite and nice to be around, and I judge this from this is a cheesy fucking thing. I judge people from watching MasterChef.
Oh yeah, Australian MasterChef is the best MasterChef by far.
It tells you something, because I've been watching, the English one, which is very different, but the English one, the Irish one, the American one, Canadian one, Scandinavian one. And I've seen the Australian and New Zealand one. And the Aussies are the most, those are the people I want to hang out with when it comes to kindness and just being, loyal to each other and, backing each other up and going forth. Then you go to America and there's instant competition and bitching and argument. And the Aussies are not like that at all. But I was watching something really fun, and I'm going to download a couple more episodes to see how that develops. That was Survivor South Africa.
Oh yeah. Now I've seen little bits of it, but
for me, sitting up here, it's not the concept of Survivor, because that's not that interesting. But for me, watching that bunch of people put together on a remote island, there is a guy from India, an old guy. They're all South Africans, but how it is. There's an African, there's an Indian, there's an Arab guy, there's a couple of black girls, and they're fucking clustered together. And there's a couple of old white people, who seem pretty reserved. And it's like, I was watching, it's like, they can't fucking possibly live on this island for 3 weeks without pulling something out of that South American bag, going, hey, you, and what your fucking people did, or, something like that. So I was watching, it's like this can't fucking end well.
No, I
Because
mean
there's so much
that's again,
tensions behind between this, you know. One of them was just an Indian guy who's I've been working as a washer, you know. He was there, you know, and it's
there's
it's going to crash.
there are tensions, but I think an awful lot of people in South Africa just want to get on. I don't think there's I don't
maybe
think
in that sense those shows can be good to show that, you know, we can actually just hang out, you know, 15 different, very different people, and do this, you know.
Just getting back to Nandinga, by the way, very quickly. So that record is definitely called The High Heat Licks Against Heaven. Came out in 2017. If you check out any song of that, check out the last song, Nagelfar is Loosed. Fucking absolute genius. It's like really dark.
That's easy to remember since they stole Fenris's word.
Yeah, there you go. But it's typical Tellock riffing. You know, it's just grim meanness from beginning to end. I fucking love it. All right, brother. I'm going to develop piles sitting on this chair for any longer. So I'm going to take care. I'm going to see you soon. We are now, I think, officially in the longest ever episode of Into the Necrosphere territory. So we've got when we do the sequel, it's going to be like Godfather 2. So.
Making new frontiers, babbling like old women for 4 hours.
Absolutely. 100%. Next time it's 4 hours, I'm gonna free up the night and have a full bottle of wine to see me through it. So
excellent. And you have to give me some advice, because I'm going back to martial arts and I have to figure out what I'm going to do, because I can't take more kicks to the head.
Oh, okay. Not Thai boxing.
No, I know. I was thinking about judo or grappling or something like that, but I can't, you know, I have a little Jason Newsted the neck, and I've been punched and kicked in my head way too many times. So I get a migraine out of nothing. So I can't do boxing or Thai boxing or
you could try jiu-jitsu. Obviously your neck gets you know, yanked around there a little bit, but it
I think that's more training, you know, when I get the muscle mass back, because I've lost about 10-15 kilos the last couple of years, so I need to pack on some shit and start
you're not gonna get concussions, I don't think, from jiu-jitsu. So jiu-jitsu might be a good thing to think about.
I'll go check it out, because I found a place that is not full of criminal fucking idiots.
Yeah, well, this is the thing too, right? You have it's so important if you do any sort of striking martial art, you can't be around people with something to prove, or at the very least, there needs to be a coach there who's willing to fuck somebody up if they step out of line. There was a guy named Jesli Adon who used to be the trainer at Gymbox where I used to train. And Monday nights is sparring nights. So this new guy had joined joined the gym and was training there. And he was taking liberties on people sparring, you know, for the whole entire session. Next week, same thing happened. He pairs up with a girl and punches her like square in the face, nose is bleeding. Jess kind of spots it in the corner of his eye, and he says, "All right, get in the ring." Clears out the ring. You and I are going to spar. He fucked that dude up so badly they had to carry him out of the ring. Never did. He never showed up ever again. But equally, no one ever pulled that shit again for a very long time.
No, but
and
I
sparred against. No, absolutely not. I sparred against Jess a few times. I mean, it's, you know, he was in the UFC. He wasn't, you know, didn't reach kind of the greatest heights in the UFC, but just to be able to compete there is a big deal.
Oh, hell yeah.
But equally, when you spar against somebody like that, I mean, fuck, it's like if you've been driving around in a, you know, VW Beetle from the 1970s, and then somebody gives you a fucking Porsche and goes, okay, there's the keys, go for it.
Yeah. I sparred from 95 to 97. We did this thing. We trained with one guy. He was ranked as number 6 in Fighter magazine in 1996. And then I got that same revelation as you told about there. When you spar with a person like that, it's just, you know, wow, you know, the way they fucking move and the shit they do. And I remember him told me, you know, we were just sparring and training, and he said he's going to show me like the effect of a very easy front kick where you just use the tip of your foot. And the way he managed to kind of kick me into the wall 3 meters with that, he barely fucking moved.
Yeah.
And I was smashed into the wall. And I don't know, the respect I got for the way he moved and stuff, that's when you realize that, you know, you will always meet someone bigger and badder and better trained. And he taught me a little respect about, when people are really calm and they start, oh, fuck, it hurts.
There's another dude named Ashley Grimshaw. He was, I think he's a Bellator fighter, or he might now have moved on just to coaching, but he was in Cage Rage. He was in a couple of different promotions here. Again, I think he, in kind of regional, smaller promotions, I believe he won a belt. But he never quite sort of, got to the big show. However, he's a great guy, super coach. But we were doing pads one night, and he and I partnered up, and we were practicing kicks. And he said to me before he's about to throw the kicks, he's like, "This is going to hurt." And bear in mind, he fights at featherweight, so he's 145 pounds. His walking weight's probably about 180 pounds. So he's not a small guy, but he's not huge. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, fuck this. I mean, it's going to be nothing. I've held pads for loads of guys, and, I've held pads for guys that can kick hard and punch hard. This is going to be absolutely fine. I put the pads up. The first kick lands. I swear to God, if somebody ran towards the pads with a baseball bat and hit as hard as they possibly could, it would still not compare to what that dude landed into those pads.
And you get shocked.
It was horrible, man. It was like, it wasn't even just like, sometimes you're with somebody and they're going hard, but it's fun. There's like an enjoyment to it. This wasn't fun. I was fucking hoping it would be over as soon as possible.
Please stop. Fuck.
Yeah, it was like every single shot is like every time the coach is like, all right, swap. I'm like, thank God. It's like
that's when you realize that those kung fu people, it doesn't matter about the size. When you get one of those people who can, in 1 inch, and he can fucking crack your chest plate and shit like that, from just learning how your energy moves in your body and stuff. It's really interesting. I do a lot of static training.
Yeah.
And packing in during 10 centimeters, how much can you fucking pack in 10 centimeters, doing that training. And I'm sitting a lot of still in front of the computer or with a guitar or something like that. So I started doing this training that Shaolin monks were doing in captivity. If you're going to be sitting in a cage for 10 years and you're still going to be, a raging body, you have to do something. And then you have to start to, you have to tension up and you do different muscle groups.
Well, that's like I was about to say, that's the whole theory of time under tension. I've started doing that. I've started incorporating that in my weight workouts recently. And the first time that I did it properly, I mean, it was literally like somebody had dipped a fucking towel in a swimming pool and twisted it out. Like, that's how the sweat was pouring out of me. It was like, this is fucking brutal.
I do that all the time.
You feel really
nice. I can stop, and if I'm really been working for 2-3 hours and I stop and I do half an hour of that tension shit, sweat is fucking pouring. Then I open my window and I have like the cold air from the woods coming in. Then I get that whole Shaolin monk feeling. I'm like, yes, the Zen is there. I can go on much longer and much more, but I can feel and see it on my muscles too, that it is actually working, just sitting still and concentrating on your muscles. People forget that too, that you have to concentrate on what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. It's like the mind muscle connection, and you're actually sculpting the muscle. You're not, the idea you can build strength, but a lot of people in the gym, when they fucking wave their arms around like idiots, they're not doing anything. They're proving to themselves that they've got they can have a quick burst of strength, but like Phil Heath, who's he was the guy that I think he equaled Ronnie Coleman's number of Mr. Olympia wins. He was saying, like, there's a lot of dudes that look big and look strong, and he says if you tell them to hold their baby for 2 minutes, they're fucking exhausted at the end of it. Like, they can't deal with it. He says it's part of what it's because they're not used to, their muscles aren't used to being conditioned to holding a movement or holding that resistance for a lengthy period of time. And he said, like, where he got really bought into that idea is, he says that after his first Olympia, when he obviously has to pose for a lot of magazines and stuff like that, and he says sometimes you have to hold the pose for 5-6 minutes while the cameraman is getting the lighting right and getting the shot right. And he says it's fucking exhausting. He says the first time he nearly passed out, and he's like, there's something to this. It's like, if I hold this with resistance for 5 counts or 10 counts, and I'm doing 10 reps of something with super light weight, I'm actually getting a much better workout than if I'm overloading it and fucking swinging my arms around like a moron.
And it feels, I've noticed that after a while you get a relationship with your muscles and tendons and sinews and everything. You kind of start to feel where everything is, and you can, like we said, concentrate on certain groups, and you can feel how that, wow, I can control this thing, you know, and I can build on that. And yeah, it's kind of like a Bruce Lee little moments I had here some years ago when I realized that, wow, I can actually do these things because I have a lot, you know, work injury. I've been working my whole life, you know, carrying shit and building shit, and there's a lot of injuries and stuff. But my shoulder is almost perfectly fine just from sitting and tensing it up and just focusing all around the muscle groups around, you know, there. And probably sounds a little yoga-ish, but it actually works, you know.
Well, yeah, I think yoga is really good as well. I mean, I actually wish I had the time to do more yoga. I prefer to look big. So anyway, all right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, mate.
Take care, my man.
Lovely talking to you, man.
All the best. Bye.
goddamn guts on the goddamn ground with goddamn Svartalv Halvorsen. back up that goddamn hill.
Red 1-6 Charlie, this is Red 6, over. Red 1-6 Charlie, this is
An epic track to end off one of the most epic conversations that I have ever recorded. That was Nocturnal Breed with Napalm Nights off the album of the same name. Thank you so much to Svartalv for coming on the podcast, being such an entertaining guest. And as I said, I genuinely did feel after that like, I'd been chatting to an old friend. He and I have also spoken since. I mean, he will definitely come on the podcast again, but we may have a couple of other things in the pipeline as well that I will share maybe in early 2023. But great dude, great conversation. That song is absolutely fucking ripping. As always, I will post the link to Nocturnal Breed's Bandcamp in the description of the podcast. If you head over there and you buy yourself some music, do let him and Tex know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. My friends, that brings us to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. Like I said, no news or reviews this week, because if you've made it this far, then you do have some serious endurance. And I will be back to normal again next week. Next week we'll have on Matt Prizzo and Kelly T of the Slave to the Underground podcast. They were meant to be on this week, but there was a bit of a scheduling mix-up, so we'll get them on next week, and then the week after, guest to be announced. And then you guys have a bit of a break, and you all get to go and celebrate and spend your Christmases with your nearest and dearest, whilst I'm out in South Africa catching some sun, checking out some animals, eating a lot of steak, drinking a lot of wine, and living the good life. I'm going to play out with a track that I mentioned in my conversation with Svartalv. This is a band out of Norway called Ekrom. They have just put out a self-titled EP. So I don't know if you want to call it a demo, but either way, I think it sounds fucking great. The track that I'm going to play is the one that Svartalv referenced. It's called I Djevelens Skugga. My apologies to any Norwegian viewers for the extent to which I have just sodomized your language, but anyway, that's the best I can do. Either way, I think Ekram is outstanding. I think this is a fantastic song, and I can think of no more perfect way to round up a fantastic episode than with this. So on that note, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.